SDP the Steve Dangle Podcast with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Breaking news, is Steve Dangle lazy? Is he lazy? He's not here. I mean, it's not like he gave birth, am I right? Am I right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
what's he doing?
Now I know. What the hell is he doing? He's not here. CJ, welcome, by the way. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, especially under these circumstances.
Now, Steve was trending this weekend. I do want to bring up this video, Jesse, of what happened. If you've missed the news, if you've been living under a rock, Steve did not do an LFR this weekend because...
Hey guys, sorry I didn't make an LFR video for last night's game. I really wanted to. It was a really exciting game, really tight. There was a fight, went to overtime, went to the shootout. Max told me he got the winner on his birthday, but I'm hanging out with my new friend Isla. Daddy Dangle, that's my daughter, number 2. So no LFR. Oh, you think so? No LFR for that cracker of a game. We'll see where this week takes me. It's been a busy one. Thanks for your patience. Appreciate it. Much love.
So checked in with him this morning. Everybody's doing well and healthy and happy, and the family's been in to visit the baby, which is kind of cool because over COVID, when Steve's first child, Leo, was born, they couldn't.
Oh, cool.
Right? So it's kind of neat that they get to do that, and anybody that gave birth over that period of time knows and understands the struggles with that. So big congratulations to Steve, his wife, his son, their families, and we cannot wait to meet Isla. I've already told them I'm coming over tonight, and they're not even home yet. So
I love that the first Leafs game in Isla Dangle history will be a Leafs Bruins game.
I know.
So fitting.
Yeah, so we may not get an LFR tonight, but it should be interesting. I noticed Pavel Zacha was taking line rushes this morning. He's not going to be back, I don't think, for tonight, but he was practicing today. So I think he's been out for a bit or something like that with the Bruins. I don't know.
I didn't know there was going to be a test.
CJ's been doing so much work. He just finished up actually doing the CJ show. So guys, I don't know what you want to start with today, but I wanted to start with this. And I know the New York Rangers Leafs game was extremely entertaining, but I think the bigger story in the NHL is, are the Pittsburgh Penguins cooked? Is this it? Is this it for this, not just this season, CJ? Is this it for this era, or are they giving this another shot? I got some stats, but I want to know, short answer right now, Penguins cooked?
My view is yes, because you have Sidney Crosby having perhaps the greatest age 36 NHL season ever, certainly among them, without question. And it's trade deadline almost, and they're 10 games back of a playoff spot. Like, remember this same team last year, they played right down to the last day of the season with a chance to make the playoffs. They ultimately didn't, but they were not in sell mode at the deadline. Like, they were in the mix. They've been out of the playoffs since what, December, November?
Yes.
And I know they had a nice stretch in January. They strung some wins together, but they've never really looked like a playoff team all year. And so my conclusion is last year was a step back. They get Erik Karlsson, trade a first-round pick, do a whole bunch of stuff in free agency, extend Jari, do everything they've done, and they've taken another step back. What makes you think it could get better next year?
So I want to run through some stats. And Jesse, I want you to jump in on this too. Okay. So we got Penguins currently are 25th in points, although it's 21st in points percentage. 26th in goals for, but 4th in goals against. 29th in power play percentage at 14.6. 7th in PK percentage at 82.2. 6th in shots for, 16th in shots against. Both goalies have a 9-10 save percentage. If I had told you those were the stats going in, you'd be like, that's a team that feels like it has an outside shot. Right? That feels like a New York Islanders team. Doesn't score, but doesn't allow goals either.
Yeah, and I think that makes the problem even more dire, is that they're getting everything they need out of the goaltending and they still can't win. You know, that's what's the major problem when you have everything clicking and it seems like, okay, the process is successful and then you still don't get the wins. That means like it's over for them.
Yeah, and defense, right? It's effort. So like, there's still effort. There's evidence of buy-in, coaching.
Yep.
You know, Mike Sullivan, paid as one of the best coaches in the league, seems to be doing the part of his job he can control. I mean, how are they 29th on the power play percentage?
That's crazy. With
whatever predictions we would have made,
it couldn't be that.
I would have even taken like, okay, they're not going to make the playoffs, but like 29th after getting Karlsson and already having Letang, Crosby, Gensel.
Yeah, they went a month without a power play goal in that November to December stretch, and they still sit +8 on goal differential, which seems impossible with the amount of losing they've done and how they've struggled. But it's a testament to they can't string anything together. They lose big and or they lose close games, and they can't get anything going when they need to get a little win streak going.
And they melted down against, I think, the Western Conference version of them, which is the Calgary Flames, right? Team with lots of talent that should be performing better. That's how I look at the Flames. I mean, they're losing talent now. They're starting to trade it, but you know what I'm saying? It's. I think there were higher expectations for the Penguins. I think there were higher expectations for the Flames. Penguins are up 3-1 on Saturday night, and they lose the game. Mm-hmm. And it's and I hate to say it, a couple of those plays are vintage Erik Karlsson defense. Like, you know, especially the second one where he's slamming his stick against the net. It's obviously there's frustration. Obviously they knew this weekend was a big one, and then they roll into Edmonton last night, and it's 5-0 by the end of the second period. Like, what do you do? And this is, it's not what do you do this year. This year you can sell, Gensel can go, and we can talk about that, CJ. But I'm asking, you brought Kyle Dubas in on a 7-year deal to probably chart the end of Sidney Crosby's career and then chart the new beginning of the Pittsburgh Penguins, where the next generation of stars come in. When do they commit to that part of it? Because I don't know how you fix the scoring issue that they have, considering that almost no contracts are coming off the books this year. Right.
And your best players are getting older next year. So just the odds go up of injuries, underperformance, decline, whatever you want to call it. That's why I'm willing to say, and maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I do think this is the end of their empire. And look at every empire does fall in the NHL. I mean, the salary cap guarantees it. And, you know, the distressing thing for me here that I circle back on is Crosby's still like a ridiculous world beater. Mm-hmm. And they're still in this position. And as much as I want Sidney Crosby to play forever, because it's been so cool to watch his career unfold as it has, like, we just know the reality is he's only going to be at this level for so long. And so you could even factor that into the calculus of the next couple seasons. Like, what can you even expect from him moving forward? And they've got no prospects, or very few prospects. They're going to have a few more after this week, I would suspect.
Yeah.
You know, given that it seems like the Gensel deal is likely to be a prospect-driven deal, which makes sense because a prospect is a little closer to the NHL by virtue of age than a draft pick, where you're making that pick and then you have to develop that person. So I really do think that they have to have a hard look at where they're at this summer. I think you're right. Only so much can be done in the next 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can trade Lars Eller, sure. Riley Smith, sure. You know, these guys have one more year on their deal. Freeing up that cap space for the future would be positive because it does, you know, increase the things you can do this summer. But really, you got to have a big conversation with 87 this summer because he can sign an extension as of July 1st. He's the most loyal guy in the world. He's been given his whole life to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like, more than half of his years on earth, he's been a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's been the captain of the team, I think, more than half the time he's existed as a human being. So, like,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Right? He's in his 19th, coming up on 19 years. Anyway, it's pretty close. If he's not quite there, he's at about 50-50 in terms of half his life as the captain of the Penguins. So, like, I don't think he's going to be, he's not the first guy that's looking for the door when the fire alarm goes off, but the fire alarm is blaring right now. And what do you do? I mean, do you know what? Maybe you just ride it out. Maybe you're like, I've won 3 cups here. This is, maybe you go down with the ship, so to speak. You try to set the example for the next generation.
Does that get them low enough, though, to get the next Sidney Crosby? Because here's the thing. What people forget this. When the Penguins won the lottery, and they won a lottery after the lockout in 2004 to get Crosby. The problem was that they were so bad previous to that they almost left. It took Mario coming back. It took, Mario investing in the team and then mentoring Crosby in his first year. I think Sidney Crosby lived in his basement, if I remember correctly.
For years. For years. For like 5 or 6 years.
Oh, so it wasn't even just the one.
It wasn't just as a rookie. No, he stayed there for a long time.
So then, if Sidney Crosby's on your team, you're not the Ducks, you're not the Blackhawks, you're not the San Jose Sharks, you're not finishing last. You might get into the conversation about lottery picks, but as we know, most years, you're not getting a generational talent at pick 5. Sometimes you get it at 48th, but usually they're in the top 3 to 4, if not first and second, right? McDavid, Matthews.
And even then, look at Buffalo. Buffalo is picked first during this window twice, right? Eichel and Dahlin. They've picked second when they got Reinhart. They've had a bunch of other top picks. And they're still, like, they haven't been in the playoffs since the original Winnipeg Jets returned.
Wow. That's
I'm just saying.
That's perspective too,
but
right?
I'm just saying, like, the math here should be really scary. I mean, this is just sports, but the Penguins have had such a disproportionate number of generational players. Like, the math could go the other way. And
sure,
maybe the next 50 years they have none.
They had Crosby, Malkin, Letang, who, I think Crosby, Malkin, you could say generational. I think Letang, without injuries, even close to that. He's been a spectacular player.
Put Fleury in that camp.
Put Fleury in that. Another first overall
and you
pick.
rewind, you're like Yager, Lemieux, like
Ron Francis. There were great players on this team.
Look at between Edmonton and Pittsburgh, how many scoring titles and Hart trophies have been won in the last 40 years. Like, those two franchises account for more than half of them. Now, I granted, Gretzky won 10 Harts on his own, but still, like, it's...
Well, if he hadn't, probably Messier would have.
But I mean, the fact that Edmonton was lucky enough to have a Gretzky +++, and then to have a McDavid +++, including Draisaitl and the current guys, and that you had a Lemieux and a Crosby and a Malkin, like, those two franchises have had a disproportionate amount of the absolute best players in the league. I mean, I'm going down on a tangent here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it would be foolish of us to predict that Pittsburgh is going to find that person. It might happen, but I mean, even Crosby, they won a goddamn lottery, as Brian Burke said one day.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that way back when.
Baby, do I remember that.
When people were like, "What are you going to do, the Pittsburgh model?" He's like, "The Pittsburgh model, my ass. They won a goddamn lottery." Sorry,
I think that makes it okay if they take a step back in the next generation of time in Pittsburgh, because we look at all the teams that were really good through the 2010s, the Blackhawks, who are rebuilding right now, the San Jose Sharks are rebuilding right now. It's okay if the next regime of the Penguins, this Dubas era, is a step back where they're trying to build it back up, because that should be the expectation. They won these cups already. It's okay. Now you can suck for a little bit.
Right.
Can you, though?
Well, they're owned by Fenway Sports.
Yeah, so they got money.
They have very, very, very deep-pocketed owners. They have a new arena now, which, if you're ever in the old Civic Arena in Pittsburgh, which, was like, I kind of have nostalgic memories of it, but it was
a barn.
It was a strange barn with a retractable roof, which was odd.
They could have done an outdoor game.
I think
would have been great.
Didn't it start as like an opera house that they turned into an arena? Anyway, something like that.
Don't know.
My point is, it was an old concrete, very strange building. If it was still their arena now, there would be all kinds of problems because there was not a lot of ways to monetize it. Whereas they've got a beautiful arena now in Pittsburgh. And so I think that they can withstand this for a period of time. But I mean, even this year, I wrote the story about the Jets attendance recently. One of the teams that's way down is Buffalo, and probably for the reasons I mentioned. Like, no one doubts Buffalo is a fantastic hockey market, but if you don't play a playoff game for 10 plus years, like,
I mean, even with the Leafs, I mean, Jesse and I went to a game with Kiss 92.5 when we were up and coming, and John Tavares scored the overtime winner for the Islanders, and the game was not sold out, and that was big news at the time. You couldn't sell off Leaf tickets; scalpers were losing money on them. Which is, pretty rare in Toronto standards because people just stopped going. It was, I think, 14-15.
It was the year before they drafted Matthews.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so even then, even in Toronto, it can happen. And I'm looking at...
What was Toronto? Was it 7 years of the playoffs? Like, to get to that point?
Yeah. Oh, no, because they were 13. They got in 13. And then before that, it was like 12 years.
Oh, right. And but it was like, it ended up being almost 20 years between playoff series
wins. Oh, yeah. 19. Yeah. Pretty bad. And I'm looking at I want to look at the Pittsburgh Penguins scoring. So you've got the core four are four of the top 5 scorers. You've got Crosby, Gensel, Malkin, Carlson, Letang. We know that Gensel will probably be traded. One thing that blew me away on Saturday night with headlines, and I wanted to know if you could shine some light on this, is Elliot Friedman came out and said that he was told that Brian Rust will not be traded. And Brian Rust is the sixth highest scorer on this team, and it was something to do with respect in the dressing room. And it makes me wonder, is Kyle Dubas looking at this and going, okay, if we can just score a little bit more, we'll be fine next year?
Well, I'm sure he is, but I mean, who scores better than Jake Gensel?
Right.
Jake Gensel's been 35 plus every year, just put it guaranteed in the win column. And then on top of that, when he gets to the playoffs, he's like one of the best ever scorers by goals per game in Stanley Cup playoff history. Now, his situation is different. He's probably going to make north of $8 million on his contract extension when he signs it. He's 30 years old. And so, if you're in Kyle Dubas's office, you're probably thinking we don't need to extend him in those years because we are going to rebuild somewhere. I don't think Kyle's of a mind to rip this thing down to the shreds just yet. Like just
clearly not.
But
and who do they sell outside of Gensel? Who do you think is legitimately a name that's out there?
Riley Smith is probably the
great
guy.
Playoff performer, and
makes $5 million. He's only signed through next year. Not that old, and he just hasn't been a fit in Pittsburgh. It hasn't worked there. I think it was a pretty shocking trade for him. Right, he'd been a original Golden Misfit, wins the Cup with Vegas last June, and then gets traded at the draft like pretty quickly after. And just, it hasn't been the right fit. So I could see him moving for sure by the deadline. I've heard Lars Eller's name a little bit, but we're talking about guys with term. Those are hard contracts to trade. It's going to mostly be rental players like most deadlines that'll be moved in these next few days. And so, yeah, they don't have, in those situations, we're just talking about guys they could move off for something.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting a big return back. I mean, Gensel is their prize. Gensel is, I put a new trade board out this morning at The Athletic. Gensel's now number one on the trade board. I think that, the return they get there is important because they haven't sold a player in 20 years almost as an organization.
Yeah.
Like they just haven't had these opportunities, and I think they're going to take this one.
And they have no first round pick this year, obviously because of the Carl.
Unless it ends up in the top 10.
Yeah, which they might have a first round pick this year because it's top 10 protected. So if it's within 10, they take it. And with the Brian Rust not trading him, I don't think what are there suitors out there for Brian Rust because he has 4 more years after this year at 5.125.
That's
I believe.
a lot.
And he's 31 years old. I don't think anybody's looking to get that at the deadline.
Exactly. Like that's an off-season kind of trade if it ever happens. It sounds like they don't want to do it, but then this has been a disastrous year in Pittsburgh. Like, there's no way around that. You don't make that Karlsson trade and bring in all the guys they did in free agency. I mean, they were one of the big stories of the offseason, right? Not just because Kyle Dubas took over there. It's everything Kyle did after becoming the general manager and president of the team. And it's not worked.
Well, he's had to clean up a lot of the mess too, and I want to be fair to Kyle here.
I'm not hanging this on his shoulders.
No, but there's some messy deals from the Hextall regime, right?
This was a suicide mission. It's a good thing he got a 7-year deal and lots of money. This was always like everybody, other than the fact, obviously, great ownership group and lots of resources to do, I think, innovative things behind the scenes and things that interest Kyle, and the fact that you going in to take over a team with these legacy players, and it's pretty clear it was probably going to be irreversible. It's even more clear now, 10 months later or 9 months later. Like that was always, that's a shitty job, man. Like my point is, I'm not even defending Kyle. I don't blame him. I'm not sure anything could have really been salvaged.
Right. But they had to try one more time.
But they tried, and it's just not remotely worked. Like it,
And so we've, Erik Karlsson. How do you think internally that trade has worked out through Kyle Dubas's eyes? Darren Dreger was saying, your colleague Darren Dreger at TSN was saying before the season started that Kyle tried multiple times to get Erik Karlsson to Toronto, although that never leaked at the time. He really loved Erik Karlsson's game, wanted him to be a part of the team. A lot of people argued that Chris Letang was your Erik Karlsson light already. You already had a guy like that. How do you think they feel about making that trade now? Because there's 3 more years at $10 million after this year.
They probably wish they didn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do we conclude otherwise? I'm not putting all this on Erik Karlsson's shoulders, but he's another guy. He's a year older now. $10 million still a big chunk. It hasn't been the fit they had hoped. It hasn't invigorated the power play. Like the things you would expect from Erik Karlsson. And I think stylistically it just hasn't ended up being a fit. But I also think they're kind of tied to him. I mean, I suppose there's a world, and again, we're not talking at the deadline, but there's a world where Pittsburgh's trying to package him out and eating more of that salary potentially. But
I mean, some team could have Erik Karlsson for $5 million if Pittsburgh goes full teardown. Like if they call Crosby and they say, "Listen, we're not sure that we're going to be able to do this." Maybe they give it one more shot next year. But there's a world where Pittsburgh eats half of that for 2 years after next season, and somebody gets pretty good value for an aging Erik Karlsson, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the odds are higher than not that he doesn't finish that deal in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Because he's got 3 more seasons.
Yes.
And given what we're talking about, whether they embrace the reality this summer or the next summer, they're going to be rebuilding at some point. And so, yeah, he would be one of the candidates to be traded with significant retention. And
one guy Erik Karlsson's going to take up most of the headlines, but Ryan Graves was one of their big July 1st signings. And I got a lot of shit for saying that this was not, I was like, what are they doing with this? Like a 7-year deal? Are you kidding? It doesn't.
have receipts on that? Or?
I do have receipts on that. It was on camera. What happened here? Because it really genuinely, I think it's gone worse on that one than they could have even predicted. Like this has just not been a fit. Yeah,
and his name has been out in the trade chatter too. It's just, he's not on the trade board if you go click on the article, because I just don't know you can move that contract.
Not in season.
But it has not been a fit. He's not found comfort level there. That's a pretty significant free agent deal for a team, like most teams in the league, does not have a lot of cap space. So,
and you know what's working?
I don't have an answer.
He's a left shot. That's the bummer for him. If he was a right shot, they probably could move him. Like the way, $4.5 million isn't like terrible, right? It's doable for some teams.
It's like if you're trying to make your kid a pitcher, it's like you want to be a lefty.
Yeah.
Yeah. There should be parents out there just trying to make sure your kid shoots right, because the opportunities are,
there's big money in it,
more plentiful.
Yeah. So no, these are the things that I want to ask you about, because to me, they've been one of the stories of the year. Again, you go through it and it doesn't seem like this team is all that bad. And I know the way Kyle Dubas looks at this, he's very process oriented. Like I remember this is one that sticks out to me because it drove me crazy. But I thought that Cody Ceci and Morgan Riley were terrible together. But after the season, Kyle said, actually, we thought Cody Ceci was really good. And they were stapled together. And I feel like he's the kind of guy that's going to look at this data and go, no, but we're actually good. What do you think he's going to say?
I politely disagree with that one.
Okay.
I think he's eyes wide open to what this is.
Okay.
I think that he's mindful of the fact that his job right now is not just building a hockey team, but it's a bit of a political position in terms of how it's not just the decisions they make to move on from the key players, it's how those players feel, what they want. This is why I'm saying this is a tough job. I wouldn't have wanted this job.
Do you think Sidney Crosby gets traded this summer? What percentage would you put that at?
Like 5%.
Okay. So we're not there yet.
I mean, do I think he should get traded this summer? Yes. Mm-hmm. But I just, knowing him, as we were talking about earlier, he's given everything to that city, that franchise. It's not in his nature at all to walk away.
Now, Jesse Blake, you of GM experience.
Yeah.
Having made multiple runs at the Cup in EA Sports NHL 23.
Yes.
And never quite crossing the line, never quite got there.
No.
What would be the first move you make after Jake Gensel?
Looking at the situation in Pittsburgh from Kyle Dubas's point of view, you got to say like only 4 guys really are guys he brought in. It's Noel Acciari in terms of like big contracts. I'm not counting like Puljujärvi and all that, but it's Noel Acciari, it's Lars Eller, Ryan Graves, and Erik Karlsson. Like those are really the 4 big names. So he had this when he came in,
and he traded for Riley Smith.
Yeah, so maybe it's 5, but I don't think this is truly Kyle Dubas's team.
Certainly not.
He had a month and a bit to try and figure out his whole situation. You uproot your whole life, you go to Pittsburgh, and then you kind of do these things to supplant the core that you had in Malkin and Letang and Crosby. So from there, it's what can you get for any pieces at this point? Like I feel like Kyle Dubas is willing to admit that they need some sort of rebuild here, and whatever anybody wants to take off his hands for future assets, I think you got to go for it, because all of their winning, they haven't been able to get future assets. So now it's about that next stage of the franchise, which I think is okay. If we want to take anything from Fenway Sports Group, is that they're okay with tanking, because the Boston Red Sox right now are actively like cutting payroll, being one of the worst teams in the American League. And that's their ownership. So I think they're going to be okay if Pittsburgh chooses to go in that direction.
It's also exciting to see Red Sox fans cry. I love that.
They've made like trading away Mookie Betts, who could be like a generational talent, and just like gutting the storied Red Sox. It's disappointing to see, but as like a Jays fan, it's all right.
Oh, I love it.
It's all right.
I got to highlight something here, though.
Please.
This is not a league to rebuild your team in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
No, it isn't.
Like, I haven't put out the free agent board yet, but I've started, probably kind of come out after the trade deadline. It's not good. Like, there are good players to be found there.
Sure.
But if you're a Pittsburgh or you're someone else who wants to be better in the fly, the path to being good is not built through signing those players.
And it's long-term draft develop. And Dubas
or
is
trade,
good at that,
or if
by
you
the
can
way.
make a good hockey trade.
And he's good at that too.
Right. We just don't see a lot of them in the league anymore. I wish we had more.
Yep.
Do you want to know something crazy? I'm all over the place, but I don't.
Give it to no. Who
I
cares?
get all my excitement's coming out here.
Come on. Let's go.
I stole some of Steve Dangle's Maltesers. I'm all hyped up on chocolate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Steve's got a lot of snacks back there, including Captain Crunch,
know.
which he eats after every show.
How does he eat that?
You know what? I don't know, because I have a very sensitive stomach in my 30s, and it would set my insides on fire. I don't know how he does it.
I remember as a kid, it would like rip the roof of your mouth.
Oh yeah. There's a whole Family Guy sketch about that.
Yeah, like Steve, like you got 2 kids now, man. Like tighten it up a little
You can't
bit.
be bleeding gums dangle here.
Exactly.
It is time for the BetMGM big story, and frankly, the big story for the Toronto Maple Leafs at least has got to be 70 goals for Austin Matthews. Can he? Can't he? Chris Johnson.
Definitely possible. I mean, as we are sitting here right now, he's on pace for 73 goals. So not only is it within reach, I mean, he's got a little bit of room there.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the room requires him almost to score a goal a game the rest of the season.
Right.
So, which most humans find difficult to do, but Austin has done. We saw it in the year when he won, hit 60 goals. He had a stretch where he scored 50 and 50 during that season. So I think it's going to become a big enough target for him that he's going to be gunning for it. His teammates are going to be gunning for it. And I say he does it.
You say to quote James Myrtle, I say he does it.
I mean, look, I think 65 is the magic number for players of this generation, right? That's Ovi's best season. That's, post the 80s when offense was at a little different level in the early 90s and numerous players got to 70 and above. 65 is the mark for guys. So I think that'll be the first one in Austin's mind. But then if you get to 66 and you got a couple games left, I mean, he hasn't scored into an empty net yet.
No, exactly.
So he's owed a couple freebies here, I think, too.
Jesse,
Mm-hmm.
being the gambler extraordinaire, what do you think? Are you going? Are you doing 65? Are you doing 70? Where do you think you land?
I would do 70 because, to their fault, the Leafs players really care about these individual accolades. You see, whenever the Leafs have a big game like on Long Island and they want to feed JT, or Matthews is in Arizona and they want to get him a game, we see them abandon the game of hockey and just play let's get this guy a goal game. And I think if Matthews gets to 65, which I think he will, they will abandon playing hockey and will just say, let's get Matthews 5 more goals. So I would bet that they do it.
Okay. All right. I'm betting just because I like him. Just because I want it to happen. I'm betting purely on hope. And this is how I go into the playoffs, too. I have a rule. Never bet against the Leafs, which is not the way you should do it.
No.
So you have lost a lot of money.
That's why BetMGM likes us so much. Go to betmgm.com/dangle. Sign yourself up and have a look. Matthews, 70 goals. Does he do it? What do you think? This episode is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. And listen, we talk about therapy all the time. Winter is a difficult time with the cloudy days. Like we have a sunny day outside here as of this recording, but I got to tell you, like cloudy day after cloudy day, that stuff gets to me, and that's when therapy.
Adam, if winter doesn't come and there's no snow all winter long, do you still need therapy?
Yes, even more, because I would feel the existential dread setting in, I think.
Is global warming a reason to go to therapy?
Yes, in fact. There's plenty of reasons to go to therapy, and BetterHelp's the way to do it, because what's great about BetterHelp is you get matched with the therapist really quickly. Oftentimes when you go through this process through other avenues, it can take weeks. And usually when people finally are ready to admit, hey, I need therapy, they need it like now. They don't need it like, it's like if you feel thirsty, you're already super dehydrated, right? So this is the same thing with therapy. You get matched in about 48 hours. If you don't like or don't vibe with the person you're matched with, you can get rematched with somebody else until you find somebody you got chemistry with. Chemistry is important, right, Chris?
It's like the eHarmony of therapists.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
CJ, which fan base needs the most therapy for how stressful their season has been?
Ooh, Ottawa.
Oh, yeah.
Good call.
We could send some down to the nation's capital.
Yeah.
And Toronto, I think, just as a baseline,
Yeah.
kind of underlying anxiety.
We're damaged.
Yeah, a lot of trauma there.
Yes.
So I think that there's some things that you might want to talk through with a professional.
So here's the deal. BetterHelp.com/dangle. Get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/dangle. 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. Here's my next question, guys. How long before Justin Hall is a Penguin? And the reason I ask that is
Are you still obsessed with Justin
it's an
Hall?
Yeah.
open secret that Yzerman's trying to move him. Open secret, that's the guy he wants off the roster because he found out what we knew, which is Justin Hall played a very specific role in Toronto, saw some positive results, and absolutely was not worth the contract that Detroit gave him. Like, absolutely not. But he could work in a system with a guy that gets him. Do you think that Kyle Dubas would make a move like that? Valuable in the penalty
That
kill?
sounds like a shot at a Leafs fan, from a Leafs fan who's upset that Dubas
And you know
left
what
and
it is?
you didn't like
because I was
Justin
told for
Hall
years
and how much
that
he played.
Cece's good. Kerfoot's good. Hall's good. Yeah, sure they are.
Justin Hall is a sweetheart of a guy.
I've heard it's
Yeah.
amazing. I
really
have
is,
nothing
like,
bad to
such
say.
And the
a nice
locker room
guy.
absolutely loved him
Yeah.
during his time in Toronto.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that this is not a personal shot at Justin
I
Hall.
feel like we're talking about like one of your exes.
It's
Like we're
it
like way
definitely-
back.
It
Like,
definitely sounds like you're upset he makes $3.4 million.
I am not owned. I am salty. I'm salty.
your ex has moved on to better things, and you're a little pissed.
And now you're trying to laugh because he's getting scratched.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I just feel like I do feel like there's. Do you not feel like there's something there? No. I feel like who?
No.
Because they're moving him. They're moving Hall. They're moving him now, or they're moving him in the summer. They're moving him
Why would Pittsburgh do that now?
because Dubas
Did
is
you
that
not
kind of guy.
hear the entire conversation we just had about
Bring him in.
what?
Bring him in. Graves.
Okay.
Graves
You
for
could
Hall. Straight
sell
up.
me
Let's
on
go.
this
All
in the
right.
off season or
Yeah?
something like that, maybe. But why would you okay, guys, we're 12 points out of the wild card spot, but we have made a trade for Justin Hall. Like,
Because he's a process guy.
Do you have a real question?
Kyle, I'll say this. Kyle is I think he's very open to being wrong.
Okay, that's an important skill in that.
It
career.
is. And I just think back to the trades he made that didn't work out in Toronto, and then he quickly undid them, or the Nick Ritchie signing, for example.
Peter Mrazek.
Like, I think that he doesn't get married to, well, I made this move and now I got to double down on it. And so I think his offseason will be fascinating because all bets are off. And it's hard for me to imagine, as much as I'm sitting here saying, like, wouldn't it be cool if Crosby got traded? I'm in that camp.
It'd be cool.
And I'm sorry, Penguins fans. I just think it would be such a cool story for the NHL if you still had this guy chasing a cup somewhere else.
And he's got to go to Colorado.
I mean, you would think. But he's going somewhere where he feels he has a chance to win. I mean, that if my 5% prediction is right, he's not like going to the bottom place team
No.
because he wants to live somewhere nice or whatever. Like, he's only ever uprooting his life to that degree for another chance at a cup. And the one thing that I think helps everyone here, that 2026 Olympics having NHLers. I just think that is going to be a beacon for like a Sidney Crosby to
Right.
I'm not saying there's any indication he's stepping away, but let's face it, he's got nothing to prove. Like, have you seen where he is on the all-time list now?
It's crazy. He's like right up there, top 10, everything, right?
Like, not quite with goals, but he's getting there. Like, he's certainly got a chance to end up there. He's got to get, up over 600. He's in the 580s now, but even points, 1,500 points. Like, he's like chiseled on the Mount Rushmore pretty much of hockey players, or he's in the queue. He's like next up to see to have his bust, put into the mountain there.
Mhm.
So.
And he's having an unbelievable year.
Yes.
Like, on top of everything.
Yes.
It's been so spectacular.
I think
this
he should
season.
be at least a nominee for the Hart. I still think that. I think he's had that good of a year at 36. And where are the Penguins without him?
It's a hard one because you get 3 nominations.
Yeah.
So who you taking out? You got Kucherov.
Yeah,
You
you
got
have to.
Matthews. You got McKinnon,
McDavid.
McDavid.
Who's,
You,
like,
you might have
crazy.
Hellebuck. Like Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I know goalies don't get a lot of luck.
Okay.
But
Can you get a
Pasternak
fifth-
has a good argument to be in top 5.
yeah.
Do you not give him a 5th place vote? A couple 5th place
Well,
votes for Crosby? A little
yeah.
love?
Sorry. I think he'll get Hart votes. I have a hard time seeing him finish in the top 3.
Okay. All right.
But I wouldn't be upset. I mean, look, as I said, he's of my generation. I was a young reporter when he was a rookie, and like I've literally covered his whole career and spent lots of time around him. I have tons of respect for him. So his success is kind of like, oh yeah, it's cool. Us old guys can still do it out here.
The last thing I want to ask you on the Penguins is this. Geno Malkin If Crosby gets traded, where does Evgeny Malkin end up?
Can you move that deal?
Can you?
6.1 for 3 more years.
He's got 17 goals this year, 30-something points.
I would worry about the 3 more years.
You'd worry about the 3 more.
If I was
points,
acquiring him. I mean, you're right. 6.1 is not on the surface an immovable object. There's certainly far worse contracts in the league right now.
If Pittsburgh were looking for value back, they'd have to retain, I think.
Yeah, or take a deal back. Like something to offset the cap charge.
And it's only 2 after this season.
Oh, okay.
So
well, that's
I
still think, I mean, he just doesn't move very well.
Yeah.
Like compared to, he was a freight train. Like when he was at his absolute best and he's like racing through the middle of the ice, it's like, who is going to stop him? He's huge. He's fast. He's powerful. He's got like vision. Like he was.
And a temper too, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's
that
what
feels
makes
like
Kucherov
a trade deadline 2026, 50% retained. Somebody grabs Evgeny Malkin to play on their 3rd, 4th line as their center. That's what this feels like.
So sick, but
they almost
that's so sick.
Similar to like Patrick Kane when he was traded to the Rangers, that kind of situation.
right, and they were this close to not resigning Evgeny Malkin.
Yes, I remember that.
Like I know for a fact that some in management at the time didn't want to resign him,
and that was the Burke Hextall years, right? That was not Dubas. So.
And they really wanted Letang, and they brought him back on a 6-year deal, which was a lot at his age.
Yes.
And then they gave Malkin the contract too. But out of, I think, like sort of nostalgia / Crosby was pushing for it, I believe, which is interesting. Like Crosby's been the one superstar that's never gotten involved in the running of the team. Like he'll do anything that the coaches want or whatever. Like I'm not saying he doesn't give back to the organization, but he was never in the front office going like trade for this winger for me or anything like that. He kind of kept that delineation clear. But I think during the Malkin talks, like he made it known he wanted those guys to stay, which is also probably going to factor in, you'd have to think, in his decision making.
Yes.
About whether he ultimately leaves. He probably would feel like he's bailing on his buddies.
Right. But it might give them a chance to win too.
Yeah.
If they're all released from that, right? If Letang, Malkin, Crosby end up at good teams, then you don't feel so bad about it. It's certainly better than all of them going out and never making the playoffs again.
Right. And just slowly withering. Like players are unrealistic about how long it takes to turn a team around. Yeah. Like remember, Patrick Kane and Taves had like 5 years in a row out of the playoffs in Chicago. Like it was a long time. Just, oh man, my phone.
Are you getting calls?
Nothing.
We can take breaks if you need it.
No, I know. It's like, that time of year, like I feel antsy about what's going to come next.
Of course.
But
well, we are recording, so anytime you need to stop, you let us know.
Those guys had to play out the string in Chicago. I think of Henrik Lundqvist. Really wanted to be there for when the Rangers rose up again. They have finally done it. Well on the other side of his playing days. I just think it takes so long. It's going to take so long in Pittsburgh. And anywhere. Like look at San Jose. They've been bad for how long already?
Yeah, 2-3 years at least.
And they're 3 years away from being 3 years away.
Yeah. Yep. They don't
look at the Devils rebuild after they just steamrolled everybody with Brodeur and them, and then they went a decade being bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I'm not even picking on these teams or their management. I just think it's the market reality. Even Chicago,
it's hard. It's hard to be good.
Even Chicago, like they've won Bedard, and I've been singing his praise. Like I don't have any reason to doubt that he's going to be all that he was hyped up to be. But where else? Like what else do they have there really?
Oh no, it's. I mean, they're going to need.
And they're going to be paying him soon.
Yes. Yeah, his ELC, he's only got 2 more after this.
Like he'll be signing that in summer 2025, and they're not winning anything next year.
And they're certainly not going to win that deal, RFA-wise. He can pretty much tell them what he wants, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like, here's a blank piece of paper.
8 years.
We just hope you don't put an extra 0 there, because no.
Yeah.
like he's going to be able to call his shot, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This is, and that's the thing. Like, I think Toronto Maple Leafs fans are a little bit spoiled because when the Leafs decided to be super bad, right? When they actually got Shanny in and they were like, we're going to be bad. The draft that they ended up winning was, they won on the Mitch Marner pick. Mm-hmm. They really won on the Mitch Marner pick. They won on the Nylander pick before that. Yeah. The fact that they had both Nylander and Ehlers available at number 8. People forget, right? A lot of teams had to screw up for those picks to be available. And then they get Marner the next year at 4, and then they win the lottery and get Matthews.
And on top of that, they never got that bad.
No, they were the worst team in NHL history.
Like, they still had Tyler Bozak and James Van Riemsdyk and Nazem Kadri on that team.
Yep.
Like, they didn't completely gut their roster of useful players, and they didn't get 30 to 40 to 50 points in the standings. I think they had 60 odd points.
69.
So, like, okay, they were not good relative to the competition, but they weren't, like, we've seen some all-time bad teams these last number of years.
Yep.
If you look at, like, the Columbus and the Anaheims and
Buffalo, the Mick Eichel year.
Yeah.
They just gutted everything, didn't want to win any game.
But here's the problem.
So bad.
is you need those other pieces, right? Like, Kadri was on the team, 3 or 4 seasons with Matthews?
Easily.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, my point is they had a useful center that they added those guys to.
Yes.
Morgan Riley's been here through everything.
Exactly. I mean, he's got some scars, but he's seen some stuff.
Yeah.
They had Jake Gardner. They had Roman Polak for, his warts. He was a good leader and a great dressing room guy and physical. And
Remember they signed and traded Daniel Winnick twice for second round picks. But like, my point is they weren't playing like they played with some integrity in their tanking. Is what I'm saying. And I'm not defending them. This isn't.
No, it was a tank. It was a tank.
But it wasn't an outright tank.
Right.
Like some of these teams now, like these rosters are all time bad.
Yes.
Like, I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but look at some of these rosters that these teams are rolling out there. Like, it's like AHL teams could beat some of the bottom NHL teams right now. Like, the Milwaukee Admirals just won 19 games in a row. They could probably beat some of the teams at the bottom of the NHL.
Do you take the Admirals or the Sharks?
Admirals.
Do you take the Blackhawks or the Sharks?
Winning is a habit, man. These teams have lost the habit. That's why a full rebuild always sounds good. Like, it sounds good when you're being talked to as a fan base. The living it flat out stinks.
Do you take the Admirals to beat the Ducks, who have 11 points on the Sharks?
The Ducks are a little different.
The Ducks are different. I think the Ducks are ready to take a step, man.
Okay.
Because Pat Verbeek is doing something I think that's interesting. He's bringing in guys like Radko Gudas. He doesn't want them to be. He has Frank Vetrano. He has Cam Fowler.
They're going to sell Vetrano, though, aren't they?
I would think.
Maybe, yeah, probably.
He's got like 26, 27 goals.
He's awesome.
But he's still signed for another season. They can punt this if they want.
Yeah, he's top 10 on the trade board, though. So
is he?
So we need him to move.
No, we don't need him. I just think he's like...
Right. But they made the Alex Killorn deal. They're trying to sign legitimate NHL players to also have this rebuild and surround them with the young guys and the old guys and have them together. And I think that's a lot more interesting way to go about it.
Right, and their prospects are closer. Like this Pavel Minchikov, the defenseman, is like... looks good, and he's already in the lineup. Leo Carlson looks good.
Yep.
Like, he's already playing. I'm not saying the Sharks guys won't get there, but they're not playing. Like, their first round picks are not yet in their lineup, from recent years. And so I think Anaheim's a little further down the road. And as Jesse mentions, they have some better veterans. So maybe Milwaukee, like a 7-game series with the Ducks, might go to like game 6 or something.
That's pretty crazy to think about.
Well, I mean, they have NHL players there.
Yeah.
Have you followed this Cody Hodgson story?
Yes, it's been spectacular, actually.
Like, what are the odds
that he'd come back and be good too?
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, we saw a couple of comebacks because
Peter Holland.
That's exactly.
And do you know what? Peter, I've texted him a little bit, not here of late, but he had sort of like groin related. He missed time with injury this year, like getting back up to speed. But if you look at his points per game, like he's actually been productive down there.
I was trying to get him on the show.
Did he say no?
He said not right now. Which was really nice of him.
Hodgson?
Yeah, no, Peter Holland.
Oh, Peter Holland.
Yeah, because I loved Peter Holland in Toronto. I thought it was a good trade. He's a good depth center for the Leafs, and I think Babs.
Very smart guy too.
Oh yeah,
like well spoken.
He came into BT once and was spectacular. Like, he was representing a charity, and I think he knew he was about to be moved, and he still was like, "No, I'm coming in. I'm representing the Leafs. I'm doing this thing," and he was really professional.
Did you know he got a real job between his career and then
what did he do?
Back to hockey? He got involved with a crypto company.
Wow, really?
But he was like a sales guy.
No kidding.
So yeah, he finished out playing in Sweden for Djurgården, and he kind of, I think he told me all this off the record, but I think it's pretty like not that controversial. But he kind of lost the love of hockey while he was in Sweden. He told me.
Yeah.
And so he moved home, and he had a young kid, and he got a job on Bay Street in Toronto, and was selling crypto and whatever for at least a year, and then I guess the itch was still there, and he made his comeback.
Man, it's amazing what he's done. And by the way, just Peter Holland's numbers for anybody wondering: 24 games, 8 goals, 7 assists, 15 points. That's no joke.
He's not like he's not
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's how old is he? Like, he's not old in human years, but he's old for a hockey player.
Yeah, he's like 32, I think.
32.
33. And Cody Hodgson, who's 34, 5 goals in 7 games for the Milwaukee Admirals. And he has not played a game for them, that was his last team, since 15-16. 8 years. That's crazy. That's a really cool, like, very, very cool story.
I don't even know how it's possible.
Well, I think athletes are different.
Yes.
I think that they're like, if you're examining, like, what do they always say? Like, if this is 10,000 years in the future and whatever the next species is taken over from humanity, and they compare Danny DeVito's bones to Shaq's bones, are you going to look at it and be like, this is the same species? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a...
I've never heard it put that way. Where did you get that?
They're built different. They're built different, right? They're just a different beast.
Right, but they're competing against other athletes who have been progressively getting better those 8 years as athletes. Like, well, Cody Hodgson was, some of it, his retirement was forced by injury, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, like, I'm sure I don't know all the details, but I guarantee you he wasn't working to be in the best shape possible as a professional athlete in that time because he was retired. So the fact he could get it back together, I mean, it's wild.
Oh, it's spectacular. It's a great story. Now,
Adam, are you willing to admit that the Preds are going to be good now that Milwaukee Admirals, their AHL team, such on?
I'm happy for them. I will.
Can I drop a nugget?
Please.
Oh yeah.
So someone who works for a very good NHL team that I was recently talking to said that they would trade their 4 through 13 forwards straight up for Nashville's.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Meaning that all that, like, to inverse that for everyone is that what Nashville is missing is the very high end players, but that, this person whose opinion I really respect says that, like, they are deep through the heart of the lineup.
So I would say this, hard to say no after hearing that, Jesse.
Your argument during it was a 9-game winning streak, and then I think they upped it to 10 games against Colorado. They hadn't beaten anyone in that streak.
Oh, is Adam anti?
CJ, you wouldn't know this. But...
I am anti the U2 Sphere thing being the reason that they won. Like, they beat a couple playoff teams.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now they beat Colorado.
But they're beating the pants off teams.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it must be the fact that
I wish we had the stats. Like, their goals for and against during that 10-game win streak.
I can tell you.
They're not winning 2-1 with, 48 saves from Saros.
I guess Trotz was right.
I mean, I'm not saying it's the Sphere thing, but it makes for a good narrative.
It does. It sure does. No, I know you're not. And I think my thing with Nashville is like, and this is my argument at the time, was this team is a mid-level team because, as you said, they don't have the top-end scoring talent. And I pointed specifically to things like Gus Nyquist is your top right winger. Like, nothing against Gus, but he's not
nothing
like,
against Gus, but yeah, against Gus.
Come on. I mean, like, what are we kidding here? My thinking was like, okay, you're canceling after 2 losses to U2. That was my point. And like, Barry, look at your roster. They're going to lose games like that sometimes. They are. And look what they've done since. That was my whole point. I don't think I was wrong.
I don't know. You dangle Vegas in front of the boys and you take it away.
Oh, you think so?
Look at the response.
Yeah, but then now they can't go to Vegas and U2's left. U2's not at the Sphere anymore. So it's not like you can re-reward them, And they took it away from all the team employees, and I hate that shit. I can't stand that. I want
I see. Like,
the equipment guys, the guys that are like, they're not making millions. They're making maybe $100,000, maybe less. Like, I feel like those guys are the ones that are away from their families, supporting this team on the road and deserved a night.
I've got a counterpoint.
Give it to me.
Those guys are now going to get a playoff bonus.
Do they get playoff bonuses?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And they weren't going to get a playoff bonus with what that team was at 10 games ago.
Listen.
So yeah, you miss U2, but if someone puts an extra couple grand in your bank account when you don't make, again, the big NHL type player money, you probably take the couple grand in the playoff games.
The winning streak is 8 in a row. The last 11 games, they're 9-2. They're tied for the best points in the NHL in that span. They have 18 points. Same with Florida. Florida's played 1 less game. However, if we check their save percentage,
also the Leafs and Winnipeg have 18 in that last.
Yes, they're tied. Florida, Nashville, Winnipeg, and Toronto all have 18.
What does this have to do with Toronto?
18 points.
It always
in that span. But Nashville's right there with everybody else. Plus 16 on the goal differential.
See?
I also like that the PDO for all those teams is low. I know that some people think that's a flawed stat, but that's not like they're not flying in the 105s. That's a pretty low. That's a 97.4. that means that they probably even deserve better than they got.
Yeah, so you're...
Oh, no, wait, sorry, I'm looking PDOA. I'm sorry, PDO.
Right here.
Yeah.
Well, 104s. No, they're in and around 100, so it's not too bad. It's not Adam's anti-Vancouver stance, where he talks about how...
I was not anti-Vancouver. I just
on a
said it's
PDO
October.
They've been bad for 5 years. I don't know. Their PDO is very reasonable. It's 104, so it seems like they're kind of playing at expectations. But Nashville's been great. 11 games. That's since February 9th. That's a good stretch of hockey.
There you go. It's Tim's 60th anniversary, and that means Roll Up the Rim is back. Woo! Yeah! That's right. To celebrate, you can win some big prizes. An all-electric Volkswagen ID.4, a sun-soaked Hilton vacation, or even some major cash with a daily jackpot of $10,000. Sponsored by Tim's Financial.
I could take the cash.
Yeah? What would you do with the cash?
Pay off some of those bills.
Where would you go on vacation if you had $10,000 and it's just fallen in your lap?
Oh, Europe, I think. Somewhere nice. A little summer vacay.
Oh, I like that.
Something classy.
I like that.
Some wine on a patio I'm feeling in July vibes with a great look of a river, maybe a castle of some sort.
And your very cold morning Tim Hortons Tuesday morning ride got you that. How cool would that be?
Exactly. That's like the payoff for getting through Canadian winter with Tim's.
That's
now,
absolutely.
Question for the two of you.
Give it.
Can you roll your R's?
Roll up the rim.
Oh, Adam's got it.
Roll up the rim to win.
There it is.
All right, earn your rolls on your Tim's faves, including hot or iced coffee breakfast sandwiches, loaded bowls, and more. Make sure to play on the Tim's app. It's available to download on the App Store or Google Play. Tim's 60th anniversary edition of Roll Up the Rim to Win is now on until March 31st. Time to get rolling. Rules apply. Canada only. No purchase necessary for contest entry. Visit the Tim's app for details. You know, it's getting to that part of the year where, this is the fun part, where the weather starts to get better, the hockey's good, but when you step outside, you need something to cover those eyeballs. How about Shady Rays, gentlemen? Shady Rays sunglasses are, first off, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They have many styles to pick from. I know you guys have both made your orders, so we're going to see your Shady Rays coming soon.
I've actually had Shady Rays for quite a while because
have you?
John Boy hooked me up with a pair of Shady Rays.
Oh, dropping some names.
When I was down there last summer for a little floorball tournament. And since then, I've had my pair of Shady Rays, and they have successfully blocked the sun.
Now, here's the thing. How many times have you sat on your sunglasses?
Lots.
Lots, right? Yeah. So lost and broken protection. If your shades go MIA or they take a hit, like, maybe at a John Boy tournament, they've got lost and broken protection. So you're covered from day one. Where your Shady Rays with confidence, because you can have, they have your back long after your purchase. There's also free shipping and return. So if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. So this is exclusive for SDP listeners. Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code SDP for 50% off.
Whoa.
2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Again, the promo code is SDP, 50% off for 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try yourself. These shades are amazing. 5 stars by over 300,000 people. You're protected and you look cool too.
CJ, what do you rate them?
Well, I'm not returning mine because I got a compliment on Saturday wearing mine.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Mine I am keeping those. I'm not sending those back. Can I ask you guys a question? Because I know you host the show.
Hit me.
Are the Leafs good?
I mean, it's hard to say that they're not. And it's actually a perfect segue because I want to go to Leafs now. Anyway.
No, but seriously, because...
But it's feeling like they are.
I don't know what their record is. What is it, 9-1-1 or 9-2-1?
I think they're 8-2-0 in their last 10, something like that. I'm looking at it right now.
They haven't lost a lot lately. I know that much.
The Leafs are also 9-2 in their last 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Yeah,
right?
9-1-0.
If you look at the teams that have playoff success, the first half of the season doesn't matter.
Yep.
I mean, it matters because you have to put points in the bank. But the teams that go on a run finish the year strong, almost invariably.
Sure. And they're getting goalies back healthy.
But it's
goalies
not
back
just
mentally strong.
St. Louis was the extreme example when they won the cup from last place. Mm-hmm. But even if you look at Florida last year, a lot of teams have to get it together over this basically 66% of the last third of the season. into the playoffs is the most important for a predictor.
Pittsburgh, the year they fired their head coach in January, and they brought in Mike Sullivan, they win the Stanley Cup.
Like, on a tear.
Yeah, it's very
LA.
consistent throughout the NHL. Is when that second half team, whoever's hottest, they're usually gonna go on a deep run.
LA 2012 was a crazy run too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them. Like even the teams that don't actually win the cup, but like that have the runs. The point is this: if you just kind of like lollygag in, like if you just like kind of cruising, those teams don't seem to do well.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to be feeling yourself a little bit. But
even
here's
Boston last year, right?
but
I'm just saying, and Boston didn't, but it's not their fault. But they lapped the whole league and then some.
how do you stay focused? But here's the thing. It's great that the Leafs are 9-1-0. You know who else is? Florida.
Yeah, I know.
And I mean, listen, the way if the
I didn't
playoffs
ask
started
they winning
today,
the cup. I'm just like, are you willing to get your mind around the idea they're good?
I think they're good.
Okay.
I think that they're playing. You know, here's what it is. They figured out the defense pairings. McKay Benoit's working. Liljegren Brody's working. Right? Who could have thought that? And then in the 8.5 minutes that the Leafs got Riley Lyubushkin on the ice, their expected goals were 65%. I think they outshot opponents 9-3 or something like that. That's really impressive against the New York Rangers. That's really, really impressive. The Rangers are a spectacular hockey team. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. There's 3 teams on a run right now in the Eastern Conference. It's Toronto, it's Florida, and it's New York. And so I feel good about that. It feels like there's a commitment to team defense. I feel like you have something obviously in the first line. You have something in the third line. If Sheldon talked about how he had to have a chat with Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi about that line, and William Nylander, who he benched in the Saturday night game.
An awful line change in overtime and got bailed out.
That was a hair. I saw that too. It was terrible.
It was bad.
So I feel like, yeah, okay, that feels good. I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, I'm a Leaf fan, and there will be always some sort of anxiety, like there's a fire at the end of the rainbow. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Jonas Siegel has, God bless him, he's a great guy, has gotten just lit up by Leaf fans because he's been the one saying, I don't think Domi's their 2C. Although I have to say that Bertuzzi, Domi, Nylander line, when they're trying, they look really good.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and I don't know how hung up do we have to get on 2 versus 3?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Do we? That's why I want to ask you. What do you think?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Tavares line played great on Saturday. And so if you have 2 second lines, and we can call them whatever you want, and then you have the top line.
Does it matter?
Well, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's the point. No team is perfect. Yeah. And we've seen a number of teams win the Stanley Cup basically rolling 3 forward lines that can score. And that's kind of what the Leafs are aiming for here.
So, like, because if you look at the offensive side, like if there's an offensive zone faceoff, you're probably putting Domi Bertuzzi out there with Nylander. If there's a defensive, Yarncroke Tavares makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, and you can double check me on this, I think Nylander and Tavares end up playing almost the same number of minutes in that game. So, like, you're kind of using those 2 lines. Obviously, it's situational, as you mentioned.
Sure.
But you're not saying, like, the third line isn't getting significantly fewer minutes at 5-on-5 than the second line. So I don't care what the labels are. Basically, you've got 2 pretty good secondary lines, and you've got what should be one of the best top lines in the league with 2 elite offensive players and Matthew Nyes beside them.
And who's looking better and better and better.
And the fourth line is holding its own. I mean,
What did you think of the tilt on Saturday? I was worried about. I said it on Friday, and I got a lot of shit for it about.
You're taking a lot of shit. It seems like there's
we all
like a common theme here.
Just throw your tomatoes. Throw your tomatoes. Here's the thing. I like from a human level, I'm worried about Matt Rempe's health. Right,
yeah, you should be.
And yes. I knew that they were going to go toe to toe, but I was like, this is not a good idea. This is not a good, like, you saw him on the bench. Even now, the swelling in his eyeballs have come down a little bit. But you could see even in the fight with Reeves, which was spectacular and needed to happen, especially after the Lyubushkin hit, he was like, okay, are we done? Like, I'm tired of getting hit in the face here.
Yeah, I think
so I took a lot of shit for that, but I was the one standing on my feet going, holy shit, this is a great fight.
Right. So we're all a bunch of
hypocrites. I'm a total hypocrite. That's why I take shit, because I'm out there with it. Was it not a spectacular? It was a spectacular matchup. The game was great. The fight was great.
And you knew it was going to happen.
How long has it been since we've seen that?
How many hockey fans, and I mean this with respect, knew Matt Rempe's name like 3 weeks ago?
Nobody. No.
Everybody's talking about this guy.
He's a what did Reeves say about him? Because you were talking about that. Like Reeves
He said that he's going to be a menace in this league.
Wow.
I think that's respect, actually. I like.
Oh yeah,
that's sort of like game recognizing game kind of deal.
And Rempe had nice things to say about Reeves.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of respect among those guys. Look, they need each other to stay in the league. I mean, in Reeves' case, obviously he's getting towards not just the back nine. He's like playing the 16th green right now. Or something. Matt Rempe's in the first fairway. Who knows what his career will be, but he's just started. But fighters need someone else to fight them as long as there's going to be fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And look, intimidation's still part of the sport, whether we like it or not. And I get that the Leafs were unhappy with that hit where Rempe leaves his feet. Lyubushkin knocked out of the lineup. We saw Bastian in New Jersey get hit pretty good by him. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rempe's a weapon out there. And so...
Do you think that hit is... Should it have been a penalty? Should it be a fine?
Yeah, I don't like the hit.
You don't like the hit?
I'm going to be honest. I don't like the hit.
It does seem like he left his feet.
And yeah, he's a big guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also seemed like charging. Like they rarely call charging these days, but he came from across the ice and he hit him. That's just straight charging.
Yeah.
Are they going to suspend him?
No.
Are they going to fine him?
No.
If they didn't do anything for the Bastian hit, like any supplemental discipline, I don't think this gets anything.
No, it's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's Monday afternoon.
I know.
That hit happened on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And do you? I mean, I think it was Biz that was saying he's like, well, they fought, so that's it resolved.
No.
It does feel a bit like if that were, it's odd that wasn't even penalized. To be honest,
it feels like there's a built-in excuse because he's in his 6th career NHL game and he's big. So they're kind of excusing these hits as to he's got to learn how to throw these hits properly. So we're not giving him all these penalties that we should be. But I think you teach him that by giving him the penalties, and the refs aren't calling it.
Plus, there's the big anti-Toronto bias, as you know. So.
Well, yeah. How can I feel like a victim today, Chris? That's really what we want to go with this.
Remember when Morgan Riley was suspended?
I think Ridley Gregg brought the team together. They have not looked back since that play. The Leafs have played the best hockey I think I've seen of the Matthews era. Like this is amazing. The way they're playing right now.
I don't know if it's the whole Matthews era for me, but it's certainly this season is not even a debate that this has been the best they've played. I'm here for that argument, by the way. I know it's a little convenient and narrative.
Sure.
It's sort of like the sphere thing.
But is it a coincidence or
no? If this is true, if the Greek thing is true, then the sphere thing is true.
No,
like you can't have one and not have the other.
I can, and I will.
He can selectively pick which narratives,
and I will.
Which narrative do I like?
Exactly. Well, I mean, look, I think that what it did for them is they really had to tighten up. Remember the next game, they lost both Marner and Tavares with the flu, and you're right, without Riley, and they had other injuries. And so, I think, and that was the St. Louis game, I believe, were one of their better efforts of the year defensively. I think it forced them to come together and get a little more serious about certain things. They've obviously experimented with the lines that you're now applauding and lauding with good reason. They moved the defense pairs around. And so it might be somewhat coincidental, but that was the triggering event that forced a lot of those changes to be brought to the lineup, and they've found something. I mean, Bobby McMahon.
Find something in him.
He's cooled off a little bit, but that got him back in the lineup that period of time. And
I don't think Pontus Holmberg was in the opening lineup to start the season, and he's been a pretty usable piece up and down the lineup too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be coming together. That was the original spirit of my question: is are you willing to, after the start of this year, where I think for months and months and months, those that fixate or watch the Leafs closely were like, this just doesn't seem right, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute.
Feels good. It does.
This is why next year when we're freaking out on November 12th about whatever we're freaking out about, we should all remember it's a long ass season.
That's our job.
Never do. We never remember.
Sorry, I'm supposed to be yelling in this chair.
CJ, would you say it feels like they figured out 11 of the 12 forwards for the playoffs? Like, I think the only spot that's up into question is if Ryan Reeves is in the lineup playoff game 1, but the rest of it seems to be solidified.
So you got Gregor on the outs.
Yes.
And obviously Robertson's been sent back to the AHL.
Yeah, because Yarncroc fills that spot. I think Holmberg's got a spot. Bobby McMahon, you can't take him out because of how streaky he can be. And I think everything else is kind of solidified.
Health permitting, I'll buy that. I do think there's a chance here you'll see them get a forward too before the deadline.
And then
the Leafs.
Holmberg's?
Yes.
Holmberg's on the outside looking in, I guess.
Depends how good the forward is.
Yeah. Okay.
Like they could also be acquiring someone who's like the 13th forward. Right?
Do you think that they're I do want to ask you this because it's been reported this morning that Nick Robertson hasn't been happy in Toronto. He was sent down, but that's a numbers thing, and they did talk to him before he went down and said it's not because of your play, but you're the only one who's eligible. Do you think that's a guy that moves, or is that a guy that stays? And do you think the Leafs management cares that he hasn't been happy?
Well, no, I don't think they care that much. I mean, like, look at this is a brutal business.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to like be flippant about it, but I think that their argument would be play better, play to a level that we can't take you out of the lineup or this isn't an option. I don't think it's likely he's moved. I don't get the sense that the market values him enough to justify moving him.
Okay.
And keep in mind, like he's going to be cost controlled still these next couple of years when that's going to be useful. And so it's not as though he's untouchable. Like I should be clear. But I just don't have the sense that there's a team out there that really values him enough to make it worth the Leafs' while to pull the trigger on that.
And if Nick's unhappy, you got to just outline it to him and say, like, Matthew Nyes is also eligible to be sent down. And the reason he's not is because he can play on the first line. He's proven his spot in the NHL. So if you were that level of player right now, you would also not be sent down. But he's not. And that's the reality of this situation. And
far from the only player this early in his career that has some ups and downs. Like Philip Broberg, the defenseman in Edmonton, who's now in Bakersfield. You think he's happy? Like, call up his chart. He's played a number of NHL games this year. He's been stuck in Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. And it's the same kind of story. Like, the Oilers aren't just going to trade him for nothing because they still think he's a valuable part of the future. I think there's a world Robertson's still part of Leafs' future. I mean, Kadri went up and down a whole bunch early in his career in Toronto.
Willie did too, even though it's different circumstances because they weren't trying to be competitive. But Willie spent a lot of time on the Marlies.
Well, and when your team's as good as the Leafs are with the ambitions they have, I mean, I think the message to Robertson should be stay ready because, first of all, there's going to be injuries. Like,
sure.
He is the first forward call-up. And I don't even want to, but just pick it. If any one of these top players goes out injured, you don't think he's immediately in the lineup? Like, not just playing. He might be on like the second line. He's one injury away from being on the second line. So I don't think it's a case where they don't like him, but he is not proven himself to be irreplaceable in the lineup yet.
Right.
And so, of course, he's not happy because he's on his, fourth or fifth stint in the AHL.
He also shouldn't be happy. If he was happy with this, that would be a problem.
Well, and he's a proud guy and he works his ass off and he's taken strides. Like, I think he's getting closer, but he's not there yet. I mean, you're watching these games. He's not like, how could they send him down? Like, how can they, I'm not picking on him, but he's not been as productive as he needs to be a full, like, to be what he's supposed to be in the NHL.
So with the Leafs heading into the deadline, I think everybody wants to know this, that, because, the Toronto Maple Leafs contingent of fans are obsessed with these things, and they should be. You mentioned something about a forward. I want to start with defense because it looks like they're going to carry 3 goalies right into the playoffs, right? They're going to try because Philadelphia needs a goalie, and they would take Martin Jones in a heartbeat.
Well, and the Leafs can't be confident enough yet.
No.
Like, there is still a scenario where all 3 of those guys play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, in one round even.
Yeah.
All right. And after next Friday, the roster limit doesn't matter. It's just a matter of who you can fit under the salary cap.
Exactly. And the Leafs could obviously use the cap space by not having a third goalie. I just don't think they can risk. They know they're probably not getting Jones through waivers. And, Joseph Woll's just coming back. Like, let's give that a few weeks before we're making any predictions where he's at, how he's going to be. And then Samsonov, full credit to him. The guy's won a whole bunch of games here the last month, but we also remember what happened in some of the previous months. So
yes.
I just feel like the Leafs are like Carolina's been the last number of years, right? Carolina's used Antti Ranta, Freddie Anderson, and Kochetkov in the playoffs. Like, I think the Leafs are in that spot right now with this trio. And so, yes, unless something weird happens, they're going to roll with those 3. I think they're going to get another defenseman who can play on the right side.
Do you think it's going to be a Lyubushkin type deal, or do you think it's going to be the first round picks involved and this is a longer term play? Like a Jake, I don't want to say Jake McCabe is not a first round pick trade, but he did have, 2 extra years on his deal.
I think they're open to both and probably more likely to be a Lyubushkin type deal.
Okay.
If CJ, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you were to create...
Put me on the spot.
a trade board that's just the Leafs, and I wanted the top 3 on the trade board, what names are going up there?
Zach Bogosian.
Oh, wow. Would he come back?
I'm not sure if he has a say in the matter.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like he can get traded here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Old friend Zach Bogosian,
Mm-hmm.
Matt Dumba,
Hmm.
David Savard.
But you'd have to blow the Canadians away, they're saying.
Well, yeah, that's probably your first round pick kind of trade.
Yeah, because he's got a couple more years.
He's got one
Okay.
more year after this one.
And
But
they wanted.
he would fit very well.
Yeah.
He
in
would
the
fit,
lineup.
and he's a defensive defenseman. He's not, he doesn't get the same sort of love as Chris Tanev, but if you look at the impacts on the game, it's Chris Tanev-esque. I think
Mhm.
he's very good at eating pucks and giving you secure minutes.
And that was something that Treliving outlined. They wanted with Lyubushkin, they wanted stops, right? They wanted defensive stops.
Well, look at the game is played differently in the playoffs. No one knows this more than the Leafs. Like we have the same discussion every year. Like they roll. I mean, this season's been a little different, although maybe they're going to end up there anyway. But it's like every year they get 115 points, and then the game changes, and it's like, hey, this can be effective when it matters.
And $3.5 million for your probably top pairing right-handed defenseman, like that'd be fantastic for the Leafs.
Right. And I don't know. I gave you those three names. I don't know what the order is. Here's the thing. Brad Treliving, which I think is a positive for his job, is known for calling everyone on everything.
Love that.
So when you're me and you're chasing the crumbs and you hear that, he's had conversations on this player, it doesn't necessarily give you the full roadmap of what's going on. I know that those are three players that they've at least had some discussions on. I think that they could have some time for, depending on what the acquisition cost is and how other things break in the marketplace.
Dumba was a guy they looked at last summer, right? And he decided to take Arizona over Toronto because of some investments he has. Or something
I saw he said that to reporters. I don't know that firsthand. I know the Coyotes were in town last week and he said something to that effect. What I know about him though is initially Arizona was thinking first round pick. Then Tanev gets traded for a second. Now it's like, maybe Dumba might be a third round pick. I mean, you start to get to like, if the cost is not too much, I mean, he's only 29. And if you look at how he's played in the playoffs in the past, I mean, he brings some physicality. I know he was sort of known as more of an offensive guy earlier in his career. It's not really where he's trended out now.
What do you compare him to? Tool, and I know that's an unfair question, but like tools wise, like, because I think a lot of people still see him as the offensive defenseman.
Yeah, but he's trending way more towards being a stopper, but he's not a Tanev or a Savard, who are really just, I mean, it's one dimension. It's a very important dimension, but you don't look at either of those players and care what their point totals are.
No.
Right? They're not playing on your power play ever. They're just there to do the hard things that really matter. I mean, quite honestly, the difference in these games in the playoffs is it can be blocking shots. It can be...
And Savard's good at that.
And punishing guys who go to the net, right? Like Radko Gudas was crazy effective for Florida last year in the playoffs.
And there's no way that the Ducks would move him?
I don't know. I think that they'd be open to almost anything. Actually, what I was told is there was no guarantee. This is like a week ago. They're going to move Lyubushkin, and then he gets traded. So I think that they're open to their veterans, but they're not of a mind that they have to sell everything off. So and Gudas is not a pending UFA,
right?
So I'm not certain they would, but at the same time, I don't think he's untouchable.
Okay, he's always been a guy I'm interested in. I think you want Radko Gudas until he's a Leaf and gets suspended in the playoffs. Because it's a fun fact, but the Leafs are the most suspended team in the George Parros era. And
I'm aware.
Gudas,
I saw
Radko Gudas is just screaming for a suspension. You know what I mean? And I think he's a guy though, is an effective player, tough as nails, big personality, freaks people out. I don't think people like playing against him. But Savard could be that without, the big beard and the big personality, couldn't he?
Yes, he could. And I don't want to lead anyone astray. I don't think that trade's like on the
No.
But I do know it's something it's available to them, and there's been some discussions. And I'm sure there's other players too that I didn't name in my three that I just haven't got a trail on. The one thing I will be candid about is I'm not sure where they're looking for depth forward. Like I don't know who to identify there.
Noel Acciari would be really nice.
I thought
$2 million
he was good last year.
He was. I loved him.
And honestly, they wanted to keep him. I think he was going to get more somewhere else.
Yeah.
That was the theme, honestly. Like Luke Shen wanted to come back and they wanted him, but he got 2.75, right? I mean,
3 years of it too. It's amazing.
He
Great
actually turned down a 4-year deal too. Not from Toronto.
No. Same money?
In the ballpark.
Just a city that he didn't want to go to.
Or maybe a situation. I don't necessarily mean it was a living situation. It might have been more of a where he fit in the organization.
4 years. Do you have any idea where the Leafs were willing to go with Shen?
Not that high.
Not that high. Yeah. Okay. This is
Look at Luke Shen, and I gotta say, like, I am fully like Luke Shen is one of the great guys that I've gotten to know around.
Absolutely.
The league. Like, just an awesome personality, really generous with his time. But if you look at his like 3 or 4 contracts before that one,
they were $800,000.
$800,000, 1 year or 2 year, $800,000. Like, for him, that's like life-changing money at the end of his career to be able to make. Like, that's setting up your family, right? Like, it's like, yeah, he could have all the good vibes of being back in Toronto and it's a good feel, but that's
you got to make your money.
It's another $8+ million that, like, there was no way he was going to have to play 10 years at $800,000 to make that. And anyway, good for Luke.
Good for him. Yeah, no, and honestly,
he's on a good team now. Like, Nashville.
He's going to the playoffs, it looks like. And I think the thing is that the Luke Shen type.
Adam still won't call them a good team.
No, he refuses.
I possibly can't. No. I cannot possibly.
All they're beating is paper bags and the Colorado Avalanche. That's it.
No, they're going to be a pain in the ass in the playoffs. Like, you've got UC Saros and a tough team. I think my thing with Luke Shen was I was disappointed he didn't stick around because I thought that was probably the best defensive partner Morgan Riley ever had, and it was probably the best top pairing the Leafs had in the Matthews era. Right?
Yes, and in the playoffs they were
awesome,
outstanding. I'm pretty sure he wasn't maybe 1 goal against at 5-on-5 or none. And he played like meaningful minutes. I mean, he was so sure with the puck. Like, this is the thing is you don't need to be fancy in the playoffs. No. You just need the defenseman not to turn the puck over. Like, it's easy for me to say. They're under huge pressure. Obviously, there's 4 checks coming, but he just made the smart pass, simple pass, boxed out his guys. Like, I just thought it was such a... Do you know what one of the cool moments, I'll say, Game 6 when the Leafs finally won that series in Tampa, and down in the dressing room, I had a chance to chat with Luke, like not with all the cameras there. And he was telling me some of the stuff that the Lightning players were saying in the handshake line to him. And he's like, I always believed I could get back, like I could be this kind of player. But he finally felt like he did it in that moment. Like he was even saying, because when he won the cups in Tampa, he was often the 7th D. Like, he played in the playoffs, but he was not an everyday, certainly wasn't a 20-minute a night player. And one of the reasons he left Tampa at that time was just because he believed he could be more, and they just saw him as that. It wasn't like animus. I mean, they gave him 2 shiny rings and lifetime experiences like that he appreciates, but he left in pursuit of the ability to play more minutes and to have more of a role. And he finally felt like he got there in that series, and like, I know some of his teammates, I won't share exactly who said what, but a lot of them basically were saying and telling him they missed him and that they could have used him in that series. And like, what a compliment that is. And so that, like, good for him. Like what his story is crazy, from a 5th overall pick to like being tossed around the league. He was in the AHL like 6-7 years ago. He thought his career was over. I mean, I love guys that stick with it, because let's face it, very few people are picked at the top of the league and lead the league in scoring every year. I mean, the ones that are, we know them by their first names: Sidney, Connor,
Wayne,
Austin.
Yeah, well, Wayne wasn't picked,
but like, and I'm not saying those players don't have their own sort of adversity, but like they're the next breed. But everybody else, it's like there's a lot of, this is why I love the playoffs, is because I think that's when I think players get more reflective on their journeys. I think like that's when you like prove if you've done it to yourself. I'm not explaining this well. Like, covering the playoffs is awesome because you get that it's so emotional. Mm-hmm. And you get that sort of, you get those revealing moments out of players.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Like I'm already looking past the trade deadline.
Are you? What are you looking at? What are you excited about? Tell us.
Everything after March 9th for a period of time is basically just about hockey. And like, so much of my job really has nothing to do with hockey. It's to do with the business of hockey. It's to do with the decisions the teams are making based on where they're at hockey wise. But so for that kind of window, it's like the race to the playoffs, and especially the first round. And then, by the time we get to the cup final, I'm like covering the cup final, but we're already talking about free agency and this coach and that thing. And, it's hard. And look, I love what I do. Don't get me wrong, but I just love, like, look outside, the sun shining. Like, you can start to imagine a world where it's not winter anymore. Like, is there anything better than the first round of Stanley Cup playoffs?
Nothing.
No. That's the best week of hockey all year long.
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And it gets long, and if you don't have like certain interests, depending on the teams, like the playoffs can drag a bit. Because, let's face it, by June in Canada, it's actually nice outside.
Yes.
Right. Like, there's like, you don't want to be inside watching hockey necessarily unless you have.
Well, most people take their TV outside. and they're just watching their backyard.
Do you have that kind of setup?
I have a laptop.
I don't know where you're living.
I was like,
I go to my little square patch and I roll around and I go, this is my world.
I'll tell you, back when I worked with Nick Kiprios at Sportsnet, he was always generous to have us over at his house at times for barbecues in the summer. And he had a sweet setup with a TV. We'd like put like the Jays game on. Like you don't
which I'm sure you were so reasonable about.
I mean, this is usually July, so like I'm reasonable with the Jays until it really matters, and then I turn into Steve.
Yeah, that's good. We've been trying to get Chris to do Blue Jay FRs, but
oh my god,
yeah, it's just not.
I'm worried that it would ruin my rep.
You think so?
Oh,
well,
just
because
like
you got like a serious journal.
Because I'm like
reputation.
Yeah, and like I'm freaking unhinged when it comes to the Jays.
I love it.
Like could they have had a worse offseason?
They couldn't.
No, it literally couldn't have been worse.
Like, are they just serving us this shit and telling us to eat it and be like, hey, this is all we could do, guys?
It's pretty clear that they had one business plan for Ohtani and another for non-Ohtani. And I think that they've obviously had to leave Ohtani in the dust. And I think that they're just playing, well, we'll see where we get with what we got.
It's a wait and see game.
Wait and see. Yeah. And then, my question is,
I can't wait till we get back to the playoffs and like the GM with the remote control out there is like changing his pitcher every three pitches. Terrible decisions. And then the GM throws his coach under the bus too in the press conference. Love that. Like, is it bad? That. Like, I'm not a fan of other things, really.
Right.
So I don't know, like the hockey fans, like, is it bad if I'm kind of like, I'm okay with the Jays sucking this year if everyone gets fired and then we can like move forward?
No, that's a very reasonable reaction.
Like, I know it's a bit over the top, but like, that's kind of how I feel.
Where you're sitting right now is kind of where New Jersey Devils fans are, where they're happy.
Right.
If the team sucks for the rest of the season, it'd be like, okay, now we can blow out our Tom Fitzgerald and Lindy Ruff and actually get this team to win again where they were last year. I feel like a lot of Jays fans are like that with John Schneider. It's like, okay, how much losing we got to do to get rid of this guy?
Yeah.
I know that like I'm a truther here, but the original sin was letting Alex Anthopoulos go.
Yes.
Like all the guy has done is like win World Series and build the best teams in multiple places.
And the reason they did it was because Shapiro,
bullshit politics.
Shapiro didn't want him.
That's our Babe Ruth trade.
Yes.
Like that's where you go back to and you say, okay, they really screwed this up.
I've never said this, but I was in the office when Anthopoulos walked in because believe it or not, he had to meet with the head of media as a part of this, and just days before he was going to go. Wow. I was there. I'm pretty sure I saw the precursor to the meeting. Like when they all walked in together, because it was back on when Rogers had the media on the 5th floor.
Did he show up wearing a Dodgers hat?
No, he didn't. His typical blue hat with the black, not blue hat, blue collared shirt with like the black pants, and he kind of walked in and he was a hero at that point. He still is in Atlanta. It's crazy what's going on there. And I wonder, long-term baseball in Toronto is going to be fine because they have an owner that's a fan that has lots of money, but can you sign Bichette and Guerrero if the team stinks, or are they going to want to go? They've just been gifted these two players and they can't surround them. It's nuts.
One thing on your Luke Shen point and how incredible his career has been. Just to go back to that for a second, he's played 976 career games.
Wow.
And there's only been it's 387 people who have ever played 1,000 games in the NHL.
Go back to his page on HockeyDB there.
Sure.
And then look up where he is in his draft class. How many guys in his draft class got to 1,000 games?
In terms of games played, he is 1, 2, 3, 4. Jordan Eberle is going to reach 1,000. He's 4 away.
Oh, wow. There's actually a lot in this.
John Carlson's going to reach 1,000. Then we got Tyler Myers, Erik Karlsson, and then Luke Shen.
Wow.
So there
do you know what? That was the first NHL draft I covered in Ottawa.
Oh, really?
And do you know what happened there? That's kind of crazy. That's sort of been lost to time.
What's that?
Matt Sundin's rights were traded to Montreal at that draft.
Oh.
And he never signed in Montreal, obviously.
Yeah, he waited and signed in Vancouver. Right?
Yeah, but had he signed in Montreal, I don't know what, like the Leafs would have got something. But it's just like, it's hard to imagine that Matt Sundin's rights were ever even traded to Montreal.
That is hard to believe. I mean, Cujo's rights were traded to Calgary. I remember that.
Yeah, and did he sign there?
No, he went to Detroit.
He ended up in Calgary, though, late in his career.
He did.
But like, it wasn't as a result of that. It's kind of like Kadri blocking the trade to Calgary and then still ending up there as a free agent.
Luke Shen, very impressive career.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just like turning it. I'm not trying to get away from it.
Who cares? We're having fun. What's the, if there is a second line center that the Leafs or a forward that the Leafs go to. We asked you about defense. What kind of forward would they be looking at?
I think more of a depth addition. The problem is they don't have any cap space, right?
Right.
Or they don't have a meaningful amount of cap space. But the fact that they took Ilya Lyubushkin's salary through New Jersey to get it down under 700,000 is a sign of them wanting to protect more space to make future moves. I mean, you don't even need a press conference at that point. It's like you're not bothering to do that unless you're anticipating something else happening. I think it's like a fourth line kind of, versatile defensive player. I mean, if there's one thing I think the Leafs lack in their forward group is truly stout defensive players. I mean, Yarncroke is one for sure. Kampf has been that when he's been good. This year's had a lot more ups and downs. But, if there's a weakness to, say, like a Max Domi's game, he's just not defensively inclined. Now, he gives you enough at the offensive end. I think you learn to try to live with it and try to balance those two things. But, I think that they could use a little bit more of a shutdown presence to maybe build a line that could be used in a shutdown specific way, because they just don't have that this year. And so maybe someone like an Achari makes sense. I don't know that to be.
I just love him.
That's a rumor we're starting right here.
Yeah, and for PK especially, the PK, I love him doing that. Right,
and he hits everything. Remember, he has like 10 hits in a game. Like
he's rearranged his nose several times,
and his nickname is Cookie because he eats a lot of cookies.
That's right.
Which is like, all right,
got the cookie endorsement. I'm pretty sure when he was in Toronto for like 3 seconds.
Lean into the bit. I like this.
Yeah,
and if you're calling it second line center, like John Tavares is still the second line center. He out minutes is Max Domi. Some of that's power play time, obviously, but he plays more minutes than Domi. I think that line is really the second line and how it's deployed, and the Max Nylander Bertuzzi line is kind of the third line in terms of how they play at 5-on-5 at least.
I'm with you. And how cool is that in a sense that you have Nylander 6th in the league in scoring as we're recording this, playing on a different line than Matthews and Marner. Obviously, they share the ice and the power play, and that's where he gets a lot of his offense too. But I think it's a good thing. Like I think back to that first Penguins Cup under Mike Sullivan 2016. Phil Kessel, who a lot of people thought should have won the Conn Smythe that year, was a third line winger for them.
Yep.
Like that was a strength. That wasn't a knock on Phil, but he was playing with Hagelin and Bonino on the HBK line, and they did a lot of good work together. And I don't think that takes away from, like, I just think that's a hard thing to match up against, and that's what the Leafs are trying to build. I think that's what Vegas was last year.
Yeah.
Vegas had an interesting playoff run. Like if you look at Jack Eichel, and some people thought he should have won the Conn Smythe last year, but he didn't. I think he had 6 goals in the whole playoffs. Like and I'm not knocking him, but it's like they overwhelmed you with the fact that they had multiple lines that were putting up offense. It doesn't all have to come from one person, one line. Like there's more than one way to win a cup.
Being able to load up one line is efficient to get like good offensive chances and some scoring opportunities and some quick goals. But the ability to roll 4 lines is how you win long term. That's what it seems like. That's the most successful way to build a deep playoff team.
Exactly. And your stars are going to have their moments, but no star dominates all 4 rounds.
No, you can't do it.
Right? Like Marchessault didn't score, I think, until late in the second round, and then he scored like 12 goals from and then he won the Conn Smythe. So like I find that the one thing I get frustrated with the conversation in Toronto at times is like everyone can point to like, oh, this one player isn't exactly what you need. It's like there's no
perfect team.
There's no blueprint though. There's no like roadmap. I mean, the blueprint is to have as many really good players as you can.
And spread them out.
Yes. And then and make it really hard for the other team to shut them all down at the same time. And then hope you get some saves.
Yeah. Because the way it's working right now is if Mitch Marner has an off night, Austin kind of steps up, Willie has an off night, Mitch Marner steps up, and they're all kind of trading opportunities the last couple of weeks, and it's really been effective and it's really been efficient. Sometimes it's Bobby McMahon.
Scoring.
And then it's Bobby McMahon. And
Bobby McMahon will score 4 goals in 2 games,
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And having Bertuzzi scoring goals is good.
Yeah, and Bertuzzi's back.
We like that.
And playoff Bertuzzi should be a different animal too.
He was awesome against Florida last year. Awesome.
And this is why they got him, right? They got him. I think Sheldon might have said recently, I wasn't there that day, but I saw someone tweet a quote where he's like, you're going to see a different guy come the playoffs too. Now, they want to probably set that expectation for him because, let's face it, they've liked the last couple of weeks, but there's a lot of this season they didn't.
Right.
There's a lot of like disinterest or half interest from him. A lot of nights where he wasn't engaged. It's like, okay, we'll give you that, but you better get focused here when it really matters.
Okay. CJ, Are you ready to take some questions?
Yeah. What do you got?
The Presser. SDP. The Steve Dangle Press Conference.
First question comes from @the_CAC on Twitter. They write, I have a conundrum. I met someone who claimed she was a huge hockey fan despite never hearing about Hasek, Waugh, Yager, or Marek freaking Malik. Was I right or justified to have the ick? What do you think, CJ?
Listen, who could
I wasn't
forget-
prepared for this.
Welcome to the SDP, partner.
That is quite a conundrum.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't heard of Marek Malik, I think that's grounds to end a date right there.
If you've never seen his top 10 where he scores on that penalty or that shootout,
Yeah.
I mean, have you even lived?
No.
See, I look at this as I don't see this as a nick. This is an opportunity to say, "Oh my God, I can't wait to show you."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this could be a learning. You can experience it together again for the first
Yeah,
time.
they could have said, like, I'm a huge hockey fan, but they're a new hockey fan. You can still be big fan of something, but new to the game. And it's okay that you haven't heard of some of the older players like Yager and Waugh and Hasek.
Like even Yager, that was the last time he played a game, 16, 17?
Yesterday.
Yeah, he's playing for Kladno.
No, I know he's playing for Platinum.
What are you
I'm
talking
talking about the NHL. Like, when did the traveling Yagers have to retire is my question. You know, like they were out this season, but when they would travel to his games, when was the last time he played and for whom?
It was like 6 years ago in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he just disappeared, by the way.
What do you mean?
Didn't even say goodbye. He just like left mid-season.
Oh, he did?
Sorry, the team cut ties with him, but he didn't. Because Mark Giordano was on the team at the time, and I actually asked him about it. Like, hey, what was that like? He's like, I just remember it was around Christmas time, and then all of a sudden, Yags was gone.
That's amazing. Too bad he never got to 2,000 points. He was pretty close.
Yeah, and he's still not in the Hall of Fame.
Which is because he's not, because he's still playing, right?
Yes, but he's basically like,
He's not coming
I was
back.
going to say what was in my mind, and then I would offend a whole country's worth of professional hockey players. But like the Czech league is not the same thing as the NHL.
Sure.
Right.
And so I feel like given that he's the second leading scorer all time in NHL history, like there's no debate about his merits. He's 52.
52.
Mm-hmm.
Like, shouldn't we put him in? Like, when it's ultimately his class, he's going to be going in with like guys that never even saw him play.
Yep.
He's going to go in with like Sidney Crosby.
It's going to be like, he's like, good to see you, fellow kids, or whatever, when he arrives at the hall, like with a skateboard.
Be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
Anyway, sorry.
No.
But yeah, I don't think you're justified with the ick.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You should get over that ick.
Well, and embrace the opportunity.
Right. Learning experience for everybody involved. All right, next question is from Devin Olson. There's a lot of chatter about Steve Staios maybe wanting to make a bigger move. Aside from the names around this deadline, Chychrun, Tarasenko, etc., is there a more of a core player on the Sens CJ doesn't see on the opening day roster next year?
Brady Tkachuk's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the question?
He'll be
He'll
there.
be there, yeah.
Well, I don't know. There was recently some rumor that just, as far as I could tell, was like totally off base.
Mm-hmm. Norris, Pinto.
I think those guys are there.
Yeah.
By the way, the Chychrun rumors, according to Dreger this morning, have picked up. As in, like, there could be something this week.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Because you've seen some D come off the market. And then everyone's like, okay, we can spend a third for this player, or maybe just a first for Jacob Chychrun, who's younger and is signed for one more year. You know, I think Chychrun will move, and only because you have Sanderson and Shabbat signed already on the left side for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to, I mean, you can't pay Chychrun more than what he makes now. I don't see them making a core shaking move. I mean, they have to get the goaltending figured out.
Right.
Like, let's real talk about the Senators.
It's the goaltending's bad.
Like, I know they signed Korpisalo as sort of like a name free agent last year, but that hasn't worked. And, you know, I do think that Staios, you know, he wants to bring in more veteran type of players. I think he wants a little more leadership, whatever you want to call that. Some of the intangibles, maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's what Tarasenko and Giroux were supposed to be, right? Giroux's worked out great for them, but Tarasenko hasn't.
And you've heard no talk about Giroux being traded at this deadline because of that reason. I think that he likes it there and they like him. But I don't think they're going to do anything from the absolute core guys. Like Stützle's back, you know, Tkachuk's back, Sanderson will be there. I think Shabbat will be there. Chychrun is the play. I think. And then obviously just adding to the group. I mean, if they ship Tarasenko out, if they ship Kubalik out, Hamnick will be done. Like there's going to be room to turn over parts of the roster to affect that change. And then they need a better start. I mean, this season was a total gong show.
Yeah, we talked briefly before the show about how much of a failure the DeBrincat and Chychrun trades for Ottawa could end up being, and that you go and you try to acquire somebody, and then you end up losing the deal in the end by making another deal early on those two guys.
Yeah, you overpaid initially, and then
Yeah.
do not reflect well on the end of the previous regime's era.
Yeah, I think those are pure Dorian problems.
But this is funny. Someone who works for an NHL team pointed this out to me the other day. Is like the problem with the deadline is you trade a first for one of these players that gives you 20 odd games and then goes to free agency, or you hold on to your first and you trade it for Alex DeBrincat, which is what essentially it cost Detroit to bring in. And they dumped Kubalik's contract in that deal. Or he's like, you trade a second for these guys, you think no big deal, or you hold on to it and you get Devon Toews for 2 seconds, which is what Colorado got him for.
Which is crazy.
And the point being is that like the prices now are ludicrous. And it's weird that GMs are used to paying the price in this window. And then some of them are like scared to pay it other times of the year.
Yes.
But they're the same picks.
Right.
It's the same asset. It's just like it's viewed differently.
It's in June as opposed to March.
Right.
But this guy works for a team that is going to make a deal at this deadline, and probably a pretty big one. And he was sort of saying like, we're stupid to do this, but like this is the game we play. Like this is
also you get visions of the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
You start to think we could.
Yeah, and you've got an owner who's like, what's going on, guys? What are you doing? It's hard to be
especially Andlauer. He's not a guy that's
right. And I'm not talking about Ottawa is not the example I'm using here. I'm just pivoting off the question, but I do think that it's kind of a crazy time of year.
Yeah. And you think they get goaltending this summer?
They have to.
Well, you got Forsberg and Korpisalo locked up already to about $6.75 million. So one of those guys.
Welcome to the league, Steve Stales.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I think you're stuck with Korpisalo till he can figure it out.
Where Ottawa has failed in these last number of years is they made poor decisions around their core guys. They did a great job drafting. They've identified these players. They've got them signed to, I think, reasonable, smart contracts.
Yeah, great contracts.
But they didn't make good decisions on the fringes of the roster, and they mismanaged their assets. And so that you have to start getting some wins there.
Mm-hmm. Getting Tarasenko for me, the gambling thing aside, Shane Pinto should have been in the lineup, and they didn't need Tarasenko.
Right.
It was sort of like just build the team.
And Pinto and Tarasenko fell into their lap, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to be an insider to conclude that he didn't want to sign in Ottawa on a 1-year, $5 million deal on like August, whatever day he signed it.
That was what was left.
That was musical chairs, and the music stopped, and he's like, Canada, here we go.
He's had a good year, though. I mean,
honestly, he's a strong asset. I think he's like kind of under discussed when it comes to the trade deadline, rental additions. Like I think there's a fair amount of demand for him.
Jesse, next question.
We got a question from Kraken Canada.
What's up?
The Canadian
nice
Seattle Kraken fan base Twitter account. Which team do you expect to overpay the most this week for a player?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Somebody who's got to be like really going for it and say
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Vancouver.
Maximum chaos. I love that. They shouldn't they?
They should, yeah. And look at overpaying. That's not a criticism.
No.
Like often the GM or the front office that overpays knows they're overpaying.
Yes.
It's a conscious decision. Like we haven't been in the playoffs in a number of years. We've had this season. We got to give our guys the best chance. I could see Vancouver with Gensel or something like that. If they come out on top there, that could make a lot of sense. Wow. Edmonton, I would put in the same mix, or Vegas, because those are three teams that could be. First of all, they're sort of got to go through each other in some version to get to where they want to go to, and then they're all kind of competing for top six forwards.
Yeah. So Edmonton, could Gensel land in Edmonton? By the way,
yes.
That is scary. That's scary. I think
Edmonton. Keep an eye on them with Toffoli too.
would be another great pick.
Yeah, they need one more forward. Why not go get the best one?
Yeah.
Best one available.
Yeah, if you're Edmonton, this is the year. I wondered about Toffoli back to Vancouver too, because it did work out really well there for the short time he was there.
It did. I think Edmonton's one of the teams that really like him. Now, the Devils haven't fully committed to selling him, but I mean, look, they just had a tough run through California. They can look at the same standings we can look at and come to conclusions. But I think that if they get a first round pick, it's going to be hard to say no to that for a player they like. Look, they might sign him back as a free agent. I mean, that happens from time to time. Like, he liked it there, and it's not his fault that they are where they are. I think he scored more than 25 goals already this season. Like, he's doing his job. Like, that's what they acquired him to do. But it's been a weird year in New Jersey. They had lots of injuries and just looks like time's going to run out.
It seems like the Buffaloes and the New Jerseys had bad luck injury years, and that just happens.
Yeah, I'm willing to especially say that for New Jersey.
Yeah. I don't think Buffalo was as good as we thought they were. I think there's still a lot of deficiencies with that line, with that roster.
It would appear so.
Yeah.
Certainly no depth.
Yes.
Nobody to hold the fort while the big guys, when they go down.
I want one more question, then we'll let you go, because I know it's been a long time, CJ.
Yeah, you had a long day.
This is from Nick Iganoff, who asked, does Chris...
Ignativ.
Ignativ?
Not off. Yeah.
Does Chris agree with Adam Wild that Shanny might be done if this season ends in the first round again?
No. I mean, sorry. I'm far less certain as you seem to be. I will say this. I mean, let's just look at the facts as they are. The Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is bringing in new leadership, Keith Pelly. And, we're several years into the Shanna plan, and there's a lot of pressure on everyone in the Leafs organization to win. But I don't think he's at the tip of the spear right now. But I'm not going to look at Adam has sources too. I can only go on what I know. So I don't think they're playing for Shanny's job. But it's very clear that the job conditions, the working conditions are going to change. Anytime you get a new boss, it can be stressful.
But we shouldn't look at it necessarily as job on the line playoff series for Shanny. Well, I mean, in your eyes.
Sorry, just wait. If they get to the second round and lose in 5 games like they did last year, is that progress? Like, I don't know. I guess I don't know what that threshold is. I think that he's going to be under new scrutiny, though, because there's a new person evaluating his job performance. And, I think that there's some question just around where this team goes in general, right? I mean, this is, as much as we were kind of excusing Kyle Dubas for some of where Pittsburgh is, I mean, Brad Treliving was thrown into a similar situation in Toronto. He gets a chance now to take a fresh look at the roster. He's got a big decision on Mitch Marner's contract extension coming after the year. I just think change happens in sports if you don't win. So,
and I think that new perspective of the new president CEO is something that could lead to a lot of chaos within the organization. It's not usually stable if a new guy comes in. It's not usually just business as usual.
Well, and I'll say what's interesting is under Michael Frisdale, who had previously run MLC, I know he left a couple of years ago and the team was being run on an interim basis, but he didn't want to be public in any way. So the bosses, like the Brendan Shanahans or the Masai Ujiri on the basketball side, they were kind of the final word on the team, right? They controlled the apps. Like when they spoke, that was the highest level you're ever going to get someone in front of a microphone or a set of cameras. I think that's going to be different now. And so that changes the whole dynamic of leadership, of messaging, of where the pressure lies. It's going to be, I just think it's going to be interesting no matter what happens. The Leafs could win the cup, and I still might say like this, let's watch and see how this all develops. Like I don't know how that will suit Brendan Shanahan. I don't think it. You remember like what it was like when what was the guy's name? Help me out. Lewicki.
Yes. Yep.
Like he came in and put everyone on notice, right?
Yep.
He's like, yeah, I got a parade route.
Yeah. He was a bull in a china shop. Like he did everything every day.
But I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was challenging everyone that works under him, and he was making sure no one was too comfortable. And so I don't know what leadership style that Keith Pelly's going to adopt here, but it's definitely going to change Brendan Shanahan's day-to-day job, just as it will, anyone else in senior management on the Raptors side, the same deal. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not sure it's so absolute, I guess.
This is what's clear. The board loves Shanny. How much time does he get? I think that's my main point here. And I'll say this, having worked for both the major telecoms that own this team, they're not patient. These are not patient organizations. They want now. And I think specifically, you look at something like Rogers, and this is just the business aspect of it. When the Jays went on those runs under Anthopoulos, funny that we bring that up, in 15 and 16, I guess 15 was under Anthopoulos. The Anthopoulos team was still playing in 16.
I give a AA all the credit for that
Yeah.
2016 team.
Yeah.
I don't care how anybody wants to phrase it.
And they could have won a World Series in 50.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. If David Price had been better in the playoffs, I think they do. He was great in the regular season, but he's not a playoff pitcher. I know. The stock price for Rogers kept going up and up and up, and it was just they only could attribute it to the Blue Jays.
Do you know how many tickets I bought those years?
Oh, and crazy
I
amounts,
spent
too.
stupid amounts of money.
I remember spending $600 to go to a game because I was like, I have to be there.
I was
and
at
I don't
the bat
regret
flip
it.
game.
You were at the bat flip game
In the
so
crowd.
my wife, my new wife, is at the was at the bat flip game too. She said I was scared. She's like, I was scared. Like I thought there was going to be.
It was a top 3 sports memory for me ever, like of a building I've been in. And I've been getting paid to go to Olympics and Cup finals and all this. I've been at the Masters. I've covered the British Open at St. Andrews. Like I've been lucky to do everything.
You go to the Masters
3 times.
He's eating the sandwiches
Jesus
at the
Christ,
Masters.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God.
The egg sandwich.
I ate so many sandwiches.
And aren't they like $3 because they keep the price?
Yeah, but when you're a media guy, they're free.
That's so cool.
This is old school because I went in 2006, 2007, and 2008. So this might have changed because I know they actually built a new press center.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time too, they just had like a beer tap and you could just pour yourself a beer in the media room.
Cool.
Now again, it's a new era. Maybe I'm referencing like something like from grandfather time, but that still existed when I covered the Masters.
And you were like, that's the thing. You were a golf reporter for a long time. People didn't know that.
Yeah, and I love golf.
Yeah.
Do you know what? This one of the cool moments. 2005 British Open is at St. Andrews. I mean, St. Andrews, first off, it's like going to the Vatican if you're Catholic, and I'm not Catholic. Like, it's so cool. Like, it's just such a neat town. Like, the 18th green is 200 feet from the best bar in town. Like, literally, it's in the town. Anyway, so Jack Nicklaus was the last professional major he played. And it's the Friday afternoon, and he's coming up 18. And so, like, literally, he's in the town. So, like, there's just thousands and thousands of people. And he goes up there, and he has a putt for birdie on the 18th, and he makes it. So he birdies his last ever professional hole. And he comes in the media room, and he said, I knew the hole would move wherever I hit that putt.
What a line.
And I'm
my
like,
goodness.
what a legend. Like, do you know how many hours of press conferences I've sat through since? And I still remember that because I was like, that was so cool.
That is amazing.
And do you know what? All the journalists lined up after his press conference to get their badges signed by him. And I didn't do it because it's like such a professional faux pas. And I kind of regret it.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you regret it?
Yeah.
But I was a young reporter and I wanted to be taken seriously.
Yeah, no, I get it.
and,
I get it.
but I was like maybe a little too rigid.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I don't keep a lot of mementos or anything, but I would have my Jack Nicklaus sign British show. Anyway, sorry, I'm all over the place.
No, but I want to ask you, the bat flip game, just want to, because Jesse was at the Kawhi shot game.
I was at Kawhi shot, yeah.
Ooh.
And Edwin walk off against the Orioles. Those
Yeah, that was
are my
great.
best
So
Toronto memories, yeah.
from what I have heard from everybody that was at the bat flip game, it got scary. Like,
Yeah,
it was
because
very dark.
people were like frothing at the mouth and throwing beers on the field. And
Yeah. And then when he hits that home run, there's this gigantic snap, like release. And anybody that's been, like, I was the best one I've been to, and no one remembers this game, but I do. Gary Roberts, triple overtime against the Senators. I was there.
I remember.
It was amazing. The snap of the energy that goes through the building when something like that happens.
Playoff
is crazy.
overtime, bud.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's the best drug in the world.
What did the Batista, like, what do you remember doing? How do you remember reacting?
I like literally was stone sober, and you just feel like you're like inebriated. Like just the rush of all the emotions and everything. It was a 4 p.m. first pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to go out to dinner after the game because, I think it's ending at 7. I just was so emotionally distressed. I like could barely stumble back to my condo. I remember buying a burrito, like a takeout burrito, to just like go home and be on my couch and just like watch the highlights and eat my burrito. It was amazing. The Crosby golden goal is my number one.
Oh, yeah. Steve was there for that too.
That was like, I don't think I'll ever feel something like that again. Like from sports. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that was...
It was pretty special.
Just the whole build up to it, the way it was amazing. I'm sure like Canadians that even weren't there couldn't understand.
I remember what bar I was in.
The joy of, or just like the release of that. Like Canada had to win, right? Like it was,
they almost didn't.
Right. Well, but that was almost like they won. It was almost like relief, right? It wasn't necessarily enthusiasm because they just couldn't screw it up. And then of course it's Crosby that scores the goal, and it was really dramatic. It was an awesome hockey game too.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Okay. Damn, Chris. I got chills. I'm excited for the playoffs now. Let's go.
Oh, man.
So it's after this week. You're doing trade. I want to give a shout out to what you're doing. You're doing Trade Center with TSN on Friday.
Yep.
We'll be doing our show here.
Are you on the whole day?
Are we on the whole day? No, we don't do the block programming thing. What we do is every time a trade breaks, we just do a quick breakdown and throw it up.
So you guys are living in the future.
I know. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
gonna do the whole day.
It's a lot better.
I'm like strapped in, and it's like if I have to pee, I got to debate like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Because like you got to take off the whole pack and walk out, and
No.
Yeah, no, we just figured that was just too much airtime to fill, and people get bored.
Yeah.
Now look, we don't have a guy like Duthie on our talent roster, so maybe it helps to have a guy like that. But I think,
we're also going to be in studio on Thursday night.
are you?
Yeah.
What?
What are you doing?
Just
What?
I'm so excited to see what special music video segment, whatever TSN comes up with that you're shooting.
they were pretty good last year.
You
You
were
remember-
Oh,
great.
yeah.
You were.
I'm not saying I was great,
fantastic.
but you remember Bruce Boudreau did one where he was like,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
like hyping us up, and then we did the goofy music video thing.
No, I loved the
tank
music
tank
video.
for Bedard.
That
remember?
was it.
Amazing. It was so good.
And James wrote that himself, did he not?
Yes, with I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there's someone that helps out musically that they wrote that.
Unbelievable.
Be crappy for Connor, be bad for Bedard. What is it like? Winning is easy, losing is hard, or I don't know, something
Yeah.
like it was good.
It was great.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
so much fun.
So I'm excited to see what comes. You're not.
I don't-
No spoilers.
Well, I actually don't. I know that we're doing some kind of material. I don't know actually know what it is.
I gotta say, what I respect from all you guys on the TSM panel is there's some people out there that are like too serious to do shit like that.
Oh,
you
come
guys are like, let's go. We're ready.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Put the
Because-
shutter shades on. Let's go.
I think we all realize it's like way overkill
Yep.
at this point, but like we're all kind of strapped in, and it's a day to talk about hockey. It's a day to talk about all the big storylines. Obviously, there's going to be trades. I just think it's like it's become its own kind of holiday, and so
Yeah.
it's like a bit patently ridiculous at this point.
Overkill's fun though. What's wrong with overkill?
What time do you guys start?
I think 8,
8.
Oh, wow.
That's so-
and we're there till 6 too.
A little
Like,
early.
we're not just there. Like we're not just there. It's not like 3 o'clock hits. And we're like, all right, checking out. Like we have to do. We're on air, but then we tape stuff for the night show. Anyway, whatever. It's fun. It's once a year. I mean, if it were, well, it's sort of twice a year, but
Free agency, yeah.
it's not the same feel for free agency.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's an urgency right now because the cup's waiting.
Yeah, and like free agency, we usually sort of know what's going to happen a little bit better.
No one talks before the day.
Right, yeah.
All the contracts wait until July 1st.
I'm not saying there aren't free agent surprises, but it's not quite as like dramatic. And everybody, like those other guys who have cottages, like literally leave from that show and drive to their cottage. Like, like Pierre LeBrun doesn't come back to the city for 2 months.
God bless him. I
So
would
I'm just
love
saying-
to live that life.
Me too, but I'm just saying it's a different feel. It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like a gone fishing sign.
Yes.
Whereas this is still the season.
Oh yeah. This is I don't know. This is my favorite part of the year. I love this week and I love this lead up and I love the first round. It's like this is gonna be amazing. I'm fired up this morning or this afternoon now.
And I'm getting away for a couple days on Saturday, so I'm
Are you?
going somewhere warm.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. And then it gets crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but it's as I said, it's like the fun part.
Yeah.
This is actually, I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's been so quiet, but I feel like absolute death this close to the deadline. Usually like I'm totally like strung out and just too much exposure, too many requests, too much.
You having fun, maybe?
I think
I
it's because
guess.
there's been like one trade.
Yeah.
Probably a lot easier.
Maybe like, I don't know, actually know what it is. Maybe
It seems like you've been having fun. Like,
Yeah,
I
like
think the
I-
athletic gig's been great. I think TSN's
sometimes
been
getting older isn't the worst thing. I think maybe I have like better perspective on it
Yeah.
all. And I'm not taking it quite as seriously. Like not to say I'm not taking my job seriously, but maybe I'm not stressed out.
the way that you would have been before.
Yeah, because like it sometimes it's uncomfortable when it's say like the Saturday night, like we just passed, just before the deadline. Maybe you're going to see friends or family, whatever, and you're just worried the whole night, like what's going on your phone. Like I think sometimes that it can be a negative. I don't know. This year I just haven't felt the same stress. So
I'm glad. Hopefully it's a far more active deadline than we think. And I think John Buccigross said yesterday on Twitter, among other things, that he thinks it's pretty much the 16 teams are pretty much decided, especially with Nashville going on the tear that they have. Now, there can be some flips and that sort of thing, but if you're looking at it, this could be the deadline. It's like we already probably know most of the teams that are going to make the playoffs. 2 weeks ago, we really didn't know that there was going to be a lot of sellers. A lot of people believed they were in. So this could make it a lot more interesting than we thought.
yeah, like if Seattle sells, it's like 5 or 6 more
Adam Larson to the Leafs.
Let's go.
pretty good players. Like, I'm not
fans
saying
want
they're going to
Larson.
sell, but like if they do, that's something.
All right. Well, CJ, we're looking forward to everything. Thank you for everything that you've done today. You did CJ show here and then went directly into SDP. It's a lot. So thank you for coming in and making time on trade deadline week. It's great to have you in.
And congrats to Steve.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you and
Lazy
SL.
Steve, as we call it. Lazy Steve.
Put your feet up, Papa.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.